Master your emotions using Stoic techniques. Emotions are perhaps the most pervasive and disruptive forces in our lives. We experience them intensely and often find ourselves at their mercy, carried away by waves of anger, sadness, fear, or frustration. We live in a world where external events, interactions with others, and unforeseen circumstances shape how we feel. Yet what if I told you that you hold a power far greater than the chaotic world of emotions? What if you could step back from the torrent of feelings that flood your mind and with calm precision govern them? The great Stoic philosophers of antiquity, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, and Seneca, knew that the battle for true peace and contentment lies not in changing the world around us, but in transforming our internal responses. This realization lies at the heart of Stoic philosophy, which teaches that emotions, while natural and inevitable, do not need to control us. Instead, we can control our emotions by changing the way we perceive the world, and more importantly, by cultivating inner strength and wisdom. The path to emotional mastery through Stoic practices is not about suppressing or denying our feelings. Rather, it is about understanding them, questioning the judgments that fuel them, and ultimately reshaping our responses to life's challenges. We must first acknowledge a fundamental truth. Our emotions are not dictated by external circumstances, but by the beliefs and judgments we attach to them. This realization alone can revolutionize the way we approach not only our feelings, but the world itself. The Stoics understood that while we cannot always control the external world, we have complete control over how we choose to react to it. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In this simple but profound statement, he highlights the cornerstone of Stoic emotional mastery. Our inner life is where our true power resides. To begin the journey of mastering our emotions, we must first recognize the common misconception that external circumstances, people's actions, or our environment directly cause our emotional responses. In truth, it is our interpretation of these events that shapes how we feel. Take, for instance, a situation in which you face an unexpected setback at work. It is not the event itself, the missed deadline, the reprimand from a superior, that causes you emotional distress. Rather, it is the thoughts and judgments you form about that event that ignite your emotions. You might tell yourself, "I have failed," or "this is unfair," and in doing so, you invite feelings of frustration, shame, or resentment. The Stoic perspective, however, challenges these assumptions. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. According to Stoicism, these external events are neutral. It is the way we judge them, our beliefs about their significance, that leads to our emotional responses. Therefore, to master our emotions, we must first learn to scrutinize and challenge the thoughts that give rise to them. If we find ourselves angry or upset, we should ask, what is the belief that underlies this emotion? Is it a belief in our own failure, a fear of not measuring up, a desire for approval? Once we identify the belief, we can question it and adjust our thinking. We are free to choose whether we accept or reject the interpretations that fuel our emotions. The key to emotional mastery, then, lies in mindful awareness, becoming conscious of the thoughts that give rise to our feelings and understanding that we are not bound to them. By practicing this awareness, we begin to shift our emotional responses from impulsive reactions to thoughtful, deliberate actions rooted in wisdom and reason. This brings us to one of the most powerful tools in Stoic philosophy, the practice of negative visualization. This technique, which may seem counterintuitive at first, is incredibly effective in helping us manage our emotions. Negative visualization involves consciously imagining the worst-case scenario, what could go wrong in a given situation, and contemplating how we would respond to that outcome. The Stoics did not do this to wallow in pessimism, but rather to prepare themselves emotionally for any eventuality. Seneca, in his work on the shortness of life, writes, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." By visualizing the potential negative outcomes of a situation, we can confront our fears head-on, reducing their power over us. When we contemplate the possibility of failure, loss, or disappointment, we begin to detach our emotions from the fear of these outcomes. We learn to accept them as a part of life, and in doing so, we build emotional resilience. Negative visualization teaches us that our emotional suffering is not caused by the events themselves, but by our fear of those events. By confronting that fear in advance, we rob it of its power, and we develop the courage to face whatever challenges life may present. Another essential Stoic practice for mastering emotions is the dichotomy of control. This concept, introduced by Epictetus, asserts that there are two categories of things in life: those that are within our control and those that are not. The Stoics believe that we should focus all of our energy on the things we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and judgments, and let go of the things that lie beyond our influence. This applies directly to our emotional life. Often, we spend an immense amount of energy trying to control external factors: how others perceive us, how events unfold, and how our circumstances evolve. But the Stoics teach us that this is a fruitless pursuit. We cannot control the actions of others, the weather, or the outcome of a situation. What we can control, however, is how we respond to these external events. When we invest our energy in controlling only what is within our power, our own thoughts and reactions, we experience a profound sense of freedom. We free ourselves from the emotional burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. The more we internalize this principle, the more peace we find, because we stop wrestling with the world and begin to focus on our own inner strength. In conjunction with the dichotomy of control is the Stoic practice of reframing. Reframing is the process of changing the way we interpret and react to a situation. The Stoics believe that no event in itself is inherently good or bad. It is our judgment that makes it so. When faced with adversity, the Stoics encouraged us to look for opportunities for growth and to reframe challenges as opportunities to practice virtue. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, obstacles are not merely things that hinder us. They are the very things that allow us to develop strength, wisdom, and resilience. When we reframe our emotional responses, we shift our perspective from one of victimhood to one of agency. Instead of seeing a difficult situation as an unjust burden, we begin to see it as an opportunity to develop patience, courage, or perseverance. Through reframing, we transform adversity into an instrument of personal growth. This mental shift is incredibly powerful because it frees us from the emotional weight of frustration and helplessness. Instead of allowing external circumstances to define our emotional state, we choose to define our emotional state by how we respond to those circumstances. Of course, all of these Stoic practices are rooted in the idea of virtue, the cultivation of moral excellence. For the Stoics, virtue was the only true good, and all other things, wealth, health, fame, and even happiness, were indifferent. To live virtuously is to live in accordance with reason, justice, courage, and moderation. These virtues form the foundation of emotional mastery because they guide our actions and shape our responses to life's challenges. When we act with wisdom and virtue, we are less likely to be swayed by destructive emotions. For example, when faced with an insult, the Stoic who practices justice might choose to respond with fairness rather than retaliating in anger. The one who practices courage might confront the source of their fear instead of avoiding it. The one who practices moderation might temper their desires and impulses, maintaining equanimity in the face of temptation or frustration. By cultivating virtue, we cultivate emotional resilience. Virtue is the anchor that allows us to weather the storms of life with composure and strength. But how can we begin to apply these Stoic principles to our own lives? The first step is simple. We must commit to being mindful of our emotions. We cannot begin to master our emotions if we are not aware of them in the first place. Throughout the day, take a moment to pause and check in with yourself. How are you feeling? What thoughts are fueling those emotions? Are you reacting automatically or are you responding with intention? This practice of self-awareness is the foundation of emotional mastery. Once we become aware of our emotional triggers, we can begin to apply the Stoic techniques of reframing, negative visualization, and the dichotomy of control. By integrating these practices into our daily lives, we can gradually transform our emotional responses and develop the resilience to face life's challenges with calm and clarity. In conclusion, mastering our emotions is not a passive pursuit. It is an active, deliberate process that requires daily effort and practice. The Stoics teach us that our emotions do not define us. Rather, our responses to them do. By changing our thoughts, beliefs, and judgments, we can change our emotional state. Through negative visualization, the dichotomy of control, reframing, and the cultivation of virtue, we can become the masters of our emotional lives. The Stoics provide us with a roadmap to emotional freedom, one that is grounded in reason, wisdom, and self-discipline. It is a path that leads to inner peace, resilience, and strength, a path that is available to all of us if we are willing to walk it. Stoic techniques to cultivate resilience and emotional control. As we continue our journey toward emotional mastery, it is crucial to delve deeper into the practical applications of Stoic principles that can help us cultivate emotional resilience. The Stoics did not merely speak of philosophy in abstract terms. They offered methods and tools to help individuals live their philosophy every day, irrespective of external circumstances. What the Stoics knew, and what we too can learn, is that our emotional well-being is not determined by what happens to us, but by how we respond. And by practicing Stoic techniques, we can transform the way we experience and engage with the world. The power of perspective, practicing Stoic reframing. One of the most enduring and transformative aspects of Stoic philosophy is the technique of reframing. Reframing, in essence, involves changing the way we interpret events in our lives. It is the practice of viewing situations not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius, one of Stoicism's most revered practitioners, often reflects on how life's difficulties should be viewed as exercises in virtue. He writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This concept is not merely philosophical, it is a practical guide to facing life's challenges with strength and resolve. When something goes wrong, the Stoic does not bemoan the situation or see it as a setback. Instead, they ask, how can I turn this difficulty into an opportunity? This perspective shift may seem subtle, but it has a profound impact on how we experience adversity. When we approach a challenge with the mindset that it is an opportunity to practice patience, courage, or wisdom, we change the emotional response we have to the situation. Take, for instance, a situation at work where you feel overlooked or undervalued. Instead of feeling resentful or discouraged, the Stoic reframes the situation. This moment is an opportunity to practice humility and fortitude. It is a chance to develop my inner strength and focus on the quality of my work, not the recognition I receive. By reframing every challenge as an opportunity to cultivate virtue, we train ourselves to respond with greater emotional composure and wisdom. The Stoics teach us that adversity is not a punishment, but a gift, a chance to demonstrate the very virtues that define us. The art of detachment, embracing impermanence. Another powerful Stoic technique for mastering emotions is the practice of detachment. In a world where attachment to outcomes, people, and possessions is so deeply ingrained, the Stoics present a radically different way of relating to the things we value. Seneca, one of the foremost Stoic thinkers, wrote extensively about the fleeting nature of life and the importance of cultivating detachment from the external world. He teaches, the greatest wealth is to live content with little. What does detachment mean in the context of emotional mastery? It means recognizing that our emotional state should not be dictated by external circumstances, possessions, or the approval of others. While it is natural to care for and value things like our relationships, career, and material goods, the Stoics remind us that none of these things are guaranteed, and we must learn to release our attachment to them. By doing so, we liberate ourselves from the anxiety and distress that arises when we face the potential loss of these things. This does not mean that we become indifferent or cold toward what we care about. Rather, it means that we practice recognizing that our peace and emotional stability are not tied to the outcome of external events. For example, if we lose a job or face a difficult breakup, the Stoic does not allow the loss to define their worth or sense of happiness. Instead, they acknowledge that life is impermanent and that change, while often painful, is part of the human experience. Through this detachment, we develop a resilience that allows us to weather any storm with calmness and strength. Marcus Aurelius teaches us in his Meditations that what we do now echoes in eternity. This reflection on the impermanence of life encourages us to detach from the transient nature of external things and focus on the enduring qualities that define us, our integrity, our wisdom, and our character. By understanding that all things, including our material possessions, relationships, and achievements, are fleeting, we learn to detach our emotions from the temporary and embrace the timeless virtues that are within our control. Emotional regulation, the practice of self-discipline. The Stoics were unwavering in their belief in the power of self-discipline. Emotional mastery for them was inextricably linked to the development of discipline and control over one's impulses. This form of discipline is not merely about suppressing emotions, but about learning to channel them constructively. It is the ability to pause before reacting and to choose a measured, thoughtful response rather than being driven by momentary feelings. Epictetus, in his teachings, emphasized that no man is free who is not master of himself. This is the essence of Stoic emotional regulation, the ability to govern ourselves and not be ruled by the whims of our emotions. In practice, this means taking time to reflect on our emotional responses, to understand where they come from, and to decide how we wish to respond. It requires that we develop the discipline to recognize when our emotions are leading us astray and to take a step back before we act. For example, when we experience frustration or anger in a situation, rather than lashing out or reacting impulsively, the Stoic practice would be to take a deep breath, step back, and ask ourselves, what is the reason for this emotion? Is this reaction based on rational thought, or is it the result of unchecked feelings? By taking this moment to pause, we create space between stimulus and response, allowing our rational minds to take control of the situation instead of our emotional impulses. This practice of emotional regulation is akin to training for a mental marathon. The more we practice self-control, the more automatic it becomes. Over time, the emotional storms that once overwhelmed us begin to lose their power. Instead of being controlled by emotions like anger, fear, or resentment, we begin to master them, directing them toward productive and constructive ends. The Stoics teach us that true freedom is the ability to govern our own minds, to choose our reactions, and to live in harmony with reason. The importance of virtue and emotional mastery. At the core of Stoicism is the cultivation of virtue. Virtue is not a theoretical ideal or abstract concept. It is the practical, daily practice of living according to the highest principles of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. These virtues form the bedrock of Stoic emotional mastery because they guide our actions, shape our responses to life's challenges, and align our inner life with the moral good. For the Stoics, virtue is the only true source of happiness. Everything else, wealth, status, pleasure, is considered indifferent. The Stoic does not seek happiness from external circumstances, but from living a virtuous life. This focus on virtue as the ultimate good means that the Stoics place a premium on emotional mastery. When we act in accordance with virtue, our emotions naturally align with our highest ideals. Take, for example, the virtue of courage. When we face a difficult situation, such as a confrontation with someone we care about or challenge at work, it is the virtue of courage that enables us to face our fears and act with integrity. The Stoic who practices courage does not allow fear to dominate their actions. Instead, they acknowledge the fear, but choose to act in alignment with their principles. Similarly, the virtue of wisdom helps us to evaluate situations from a rational perspective, preventing us from being overwhelmed by destructive emotions. Wisdom teaches us to see things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be, and to respond with calmness and clarity. Wisdom helps us distinguish between what is within our control and what is beyond it, thus reducing unnecessary emotional suffering. Through the cultivation of these virtues, we develop emotional resilience. We learn to face life's challenges with steadiness, not because we are immune to pain or hardship, but because we have trained ourselves to respond with virtue in the face of adversity. Practical application: Stoic practices in modern life. In the fast-paced, chaotic world we live in today, it can be easy to forget the wisdom of the Stoics. Yet the timeless teachings of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius provide us with practical tools to navigate the emotional turbulence of modern life. Whether it's dealing with stress at work, managing personal relationships, or coping with the uncertainty of the future, Stoic principles can serve as a beacon of light in the darkness. To integrate these teachings into our daily lives, we must commit to the practice of Stoic self-examination. Begin each day with a moment of reflection. Ask yourself, what am I likely to face today? What challenges might arise, and how can I approach them with calm and clarity? Throughout the day, remain mindful of your emotional responses, taking note of when you are tempted to react impulsively. At the end of each day, reflect on your actions. Did you respond with virtue? Were there moments when you allowed your emotions to govern you? In these reflections, you will find both opportunities for growth and encouragement for the path you have already traveled. Mastering the inner dialogue. The Stoic practice of self-talk, a powerful and often overlooked component of emotional mastery, lies in the way we engage in self-talk. Our inner dialogue, the thoughts, beliefs, and narratives that run in the background of our minds, shapes our emotions and experiences more than we realize. The Stoics understood that by controlling the way we speak to ourselves, we could dramatically influence our emotional responses to external events. This practice of mindful self-talk is central to the Stoic way of life and helps cultivate emotional resilience. Epictetus, in his Enchiridion, emphasized that we are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens. The implications of this teaching are profound. The way we interpret events through our internal dialogue can either exacerbate emotional turmoil or alleviate it. The Stoic approach to self-talk is not about denying or suppressing emotions, but about reframing them in a way that brings peace of mind. For example, imagine a situation where you are criticized at work. A typical emotional response might be anger or frustration, fueled by the belief that you are being unfairly treated or that your value is being diminished. However, the Stoic would challenge these automatic thoughts. Instead of saying to themselves, "This is unfair, I don't deserve this," the Stoic would reframe the criticism as an opportunity to learn and grow. They might say, "This is a chance to improve. This feedback is valuable. It may be difficult to hear, but I can use it to become better at what I do." By practicing this form of self-talk, we begin to reframe even negative situations into opportunities for growth. When we alter the narrative in our minds, we change how we feel about the event. The Stoic way teaches us that we have the power to shape our internal responses, not by altering the external world, but by changing the way we interpret it. Over time, this becomes a habit, and we begin to automatically respond to challenges with calmness, rationality, and equanimity. The power of stillness. The Stoic practice of meditation and reflection. One of the most crucial aspects of emotional mastery that the Stoics practiced was the cultivation of stillness. In our fast-paced, hyper-connected world, stillness is often undervalued. Yet for the Stoics, stillness, both physical and mental, was essential to emotional mastery. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius often reflects on the importance of solitude and quiet contemplation. He would retreat into moments of stillness, not just to rest, but to examine his thoughts, his reactions, and his place in the world. Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul, he wrote. Stillness allows us to step back from the noise of daily life and gain clarity about our emotions and thoughts. When we practice stillness, we create space between stimulus and response. We are no longer governed by immediate emotional reactions, but can respond from a place of calm and reason. This is especially important in moments of crisis or emotional distress. When confronted with a challenging situation, the Stoic practice is to first seek stillness, to pause, breathe, and reflect. before reacting. Taking time each day to engage in stillness is an act of emotional self-discipline. Whether through formal meditation, quiet reflection, or simply taking a walk in nature, the goal is to create a space where we can clear our minds and reconnect with our deepest values. In these moments of stillness, we can ask ourselves questions like, what is my true response to this situation? What is within my control here? What virtues can I practice in this moment? In the silence, we find our answers, not from the clamor of our emotions, but from the quiet wisdom of our inner selves. Stillness also allows us to reflect on our emotional responses and learn from them. After a difficult or emotional experience, the Stoic practices self-examination. This involves reviewing our actions and reactions, asking ourselves whether we responded with virtue and wisdom, and identifying areas where we might improve. By making reflection a regular part of our daily routine, we create the space necessary for emotional growth and development. The role of others. Stoic wisdom in relationships. While Stoicism is often seen as a philosophy of individual strength and self-mastery, it is equally relevant in our interactions with others. Emotions are deeply intertwined with our relationships, and the Stoic approach to emotional mastery involves applying its principles in our interactions with people. The Stoics taught us that our relationships should be based on virtue, respect, and justice, rather than on the pursuit of external validation or fleeting pleasures. One of the most powerful Stoic teachings on relationships comes from Epictetus, who argued that we are not disturbed by what others do to us, but by our judgments about what they do. In other words, the way we experience relationships is determined not by the behavior of others, but by how we choose to perceive and react to their behavior. This teaching is especially important in moments of conflict. When someone treats us unfairly, it is not the offense itself that causes us emotional turmoil, but our judgment about the offense. If we believe that someone's actions are an affront to our dignity, our emotions will reflect that belief: anger, frustration, and resentment. The Stoic approach to relationships encourages us to detach from the desire for approval and to focus instead on cultivating virtue. If someone behaves unjustly toward us, we do not allow their behavior to determine our emotional state. Instead, we maintain our composure and respond with wisdom and justice. We recognize that the actions of others are beyond our control, but our responses are within our power. This detachment does not mean we accept mistreatment, but that we refuse to let external actions disturb our inner peace. Furthermore, the Stoics teach us to see others through the lens of empathy and understanding. Instead of reacting with judgment or anger, the Stoic seeks to understand the motivations behind another's actions. If someone is behaving wrongly, they are acting in ignorance of what is good, Epictetus said. This understanding allows us to respond not with emotional reactivity, but with compassion and wisdom. In this way, we build relationships that are grounded in virtue, rather than in emotional turbulence. Living in harmony with nature, Stoic acceptance of fate. One of the central teachings of Stoicism is the concept of living in harmony with nature, particularly the natural course of life. The Stoics believe that we should accept what life brings with equanimity, recognizing that the natural world and life itself are governed by reason. The external events that occur in our lives, the losses, disappointments, and setbacks, are part of this natural order. By accepting that life is beyond our full control, we stop fighting against fate and learn to move with it. This acceptance of fate is not passive resignation, but active participation in the flow of life. It involves acknowledging that things will not always go as we wish, and that suffering is an inevitable part of the human condition. However, as the Stoics teach us, we can respond to suffering with virtue. When we accept that pain and hardship are inevitable, we free ourselves from the emotional suffering that comes from resisting them. Instead of seeing adversity as something that should not have happened, we begin to see it as a natural part of life, a part that can teach us resilience, patience, and strength. Marcus Aurelius, reflecting on the inevitability of death and the impermanence of life, reminds us that the universe is change, life is judgment. In this sense, the Stoics' acceptance of fate is not an abdication of responsibility, but an embrace of the natural flow of existence. By living in harmony with nature, we align ourselves with the larger order of the universe and find peace in accepting that we cannot control everything that happens. The Stoic goal is not to escape suffering, but to rise above it, to meet it with calmness and wisdom. The ultimate goal, inner freedom. In the end, the ultimate goal of Stoic practice is inner freedom, the freedom to live according to our highest principles, irrespective of the external forces that might seek to disturb our peace. The Stoics teach us that the greatest form of freedom is not the absence of external constraints, but the mastery over our own minds. By mastering our emotions, thoughts, and responses, we free ourselves from the tyranny of external circumstances. The more we cultivate this inner freedom, the less we are enslaved by our impulses, our fears, and our desires. This freedom is not the ability to avoid challenges or suffering, but the ability to face those challenges with courage, clarity, and composure. It is the freedom to act in accordance with virtue, regardless of the external chaos around us. It is the freedom to live a life of purpose, meaning, and resilience. And it is through the practice of Stoic techniques, reframing, self-discipline, stillness, empathy, and acceptance, that we achieve this freedom. The Stoic path is not an easy one, but it is a path that leads to true emotional mastery and inner peace. The Stoic approach to pain and suffering, embracing adversity as a teacher. One of the most profound aspects of Stoic philosophy is the Stoic approach to pain and suffering. In a world that often prioritizes comfort, success, and pleasure, Stoicism provides a radically different approach, one that sees hardship and suffering not as something to avoid or fear, but as an essential part of life and a crucial tool for personal growth. For the Stoics, suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience. Whether it comes in the form of physical pain, emotional distress, loss, or disappointment, the Stoic believes that pain is not inherently bad, nor does it signify failure or injustice. In fact, pain and suffering provide us with unique opportunities for virtue, reflection, and growth. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius writes, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This powerful idea encapsulates the Stoic perspective on suffering. It is not something to be avoided, but something to be embraced as an opportunity for development. When we face a challenge, the typical emotional response is often one of fear, frustration, or despair. The Stoic, however, is trained to meet pain with resolve. The Stoics do not deny or repress their emotions. Rather, they understand that suffering is part of the natural order and that it offers valuable lessons. Instead of railing against pain or resenting it, they approach it with a mindset of acceptance. They ask, "What can I learn from this? How can this adversity make me stronger, wiser, and more virtuous?" This approach is transformative. When we stop viewing suffering as something to fear or resent, we begin to see it as a necessary part of life's process. It is through pain that we can develop resilience, perseverance, and wisdom. Every moment of hardship becomes a test of our character, a chance to practice courage, fortitude, and patience. For the Stoic, adversity is not a punishment, but a gift, a way to become a stronger and better person. In this way, pain becomes the crucible in which our virtues are forged. When we face a painful event, whether it be the loss of a loved one, a personal failure, or a physical injury, we can choose to respond with anger, bitterness, or resignation. Or we can choose to respond with wisdom, patience, and fortitude. This is the true path of emotional mastery, the ability to face pain with courage and to transform it into a force for growth. The Stoics teach us that our emotional responses to suffering are within our control. We cannot always control the pain itself, but we can control how we react to it. By shifting our mindset to one of acceptance and understanding, we can face even the most difficult situations with calmness and resilience. This is not a call for passive resignation, but for active engagement with the world. It is the recognition that we are not helpless in the face of adversity. We are powerful in the way we choose to respond. The role of gratitude in Stoic emotional mastery. Another key practice in the Stoic approach to emotional mastery is the cultivation of gratitude. In our modern world, it is easy to become fixated on what we lack, the things we desire, the goals we have yet to achieve, and the people we wish were in our lives. This constant focus on what is missing can lead to dissatisfaction and discontent. The Stoics, however, emphasize the importance of appreciating what we already have rather than constantly yearning for more. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflects on the fleeting nature of life and the impermanence of all things. He encourages us to practice gratitude for the present moment, for the people in our lives, and for the simple blessings we often take for granted. In one passage, he writes, "Don't waste time on what you don't have. Appreciate what you do have. Be content with the present moment." This practice of gratitude helps shift our focus from what we lack to what we already possess, fostering a sense of contentment and inner peace. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to negative emotions such as envy, frustration, and dissatisfaction. When we practice gratitude, we train our minds to focus on the positive aspects of our lives rather than on what is missing. We learn to appreciate the simple things, the beauty of nature, the love of family and friends, the opportunity to grow and learn. This practice of gratitude helps us to develop a more positive and resilient outlook on life. Furthermore, gratitude helps us to maintain perspective. In difficult times, it is easy to become overwhelmed by negative emotions and to lose sight of the blessings that still exist in our lives. By regularly practicing gratitude, we can shift our attention away from our problems and towards the things that are going well. This shift in perspective helps us to respond to challenges with greater emotional resilience, as we are reminded of the positive aspects of our lives that remain intact, even in the face of adversity. In a practical sense, the Stoics recommend that we take time each day to reflect on the things we are grateful for. This could involve journaling about the positive aspects of the day, or simply taking a moment to mentally acknowledge the blessings in our lives. By making gratitude a daily practice, we create a habit of focusing on the good, which can help balance out the negative emotions that often arise in the face of challenges. Self-mastery. Through regular reflection and journaling for the Stoics, self-mastery was not a one-time event, but a lifelong process that required continuous reflection and self-examination. This is where the practice of journaling comes in. The Stoics saw journaling as a way to engage in regular self-reflection and to track their progress on the path to emotional mastery. Marcus Aurelius, perhaps the most famous Stoic emperor, is known for his Meditations, which he wrote as a form of personal reflection and self-examination. These writings were not intended for publication, but were instead a means for Marcus to remind himself of Stoic principles and to reflect on his actions, thoughts, and emotions. In his Meditations, he regularly questions his own responses to life's challenges, asking himself how he can better align his actions with the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. The Stoic practice of journaling allows us to take a step back from the chaos of daily life and assess our emotional state. By writing down our thoughts, feelings, and reactions to events, we can gain greater insight into the patterns that shape our emotions. We can also track our progress, celebrating the moments when we respond with virtue and learning from the times when we fall short. Journaling also serves as a tool for developing mindfulness. By regularly reflecting on our thoughts and emotions, we become more aware of the beliefs and judgments that give rise to our feelings. This awareness allows us to challenge our automatic reactions and to choose more thoughtful, deliberate responses. As we become more conscious of our inner world, we gain greater control over our emotional lives and develop the ability to respond with calmness, reason, and resilience. The Stoic practice of equanimity, mastery over internal peace. Finally, the ultimate Stoic goal is the cultivation of equanimity, a state of inner peace and balance that is unaffected by the external world. Equanimity is the ability to remain calm and composed in the face of life's inevitable ups and downs, and it is the cornerstone of Stoic emotional mastery. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius repeatedly emphasizes the importance of maintaining equanimity, even in the most challenging circumstances. He writes, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." The Stoic practice of equanimity is based on the understanding that we cannot control external events, but we can control how we respond to them. By cultivating inner peace, we free ourselves from the emotional turbulence that arises when we try to control things outside our power. Equanimity does not mean that we suppress our emotions or ignore the difficulties of life. Rather, it means that we respond to those challenges with calmness, patience, and clarity, trusting in our ability to handle whatever life brings our way. The practice of equanimity involves embracing life's uncertainties with grace and acceptance. It is the recognition that no matter what happens, we can choose how to respond. When we cultivate this mindset, we are no longer at the mercy of our emotions. Instead, we become the masters of our own inner world. The role of virtue in emotional mastery. At the heart of Stoic philosophy lies the belief that virtue is the only true good. Virtue is the source of all lasting happiness and fulfillment, and it is through the cultivation of virtue that we learn to master our emotions. The Stoics taught that external circumstances, wealth, power, fame, or even health, are neither inherently good nor bad. They are indifferents. What truly matters, according to Stoicism, is how we live in alignment with virtue, which is understood as the pursuit of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Virtue as the source of peace. The Stoic approach to mastering emotions is rooted in the belief that our emotional responses are a direct reflection of our moral character. When we cultivate virtue, we are training ourselves to respond to life's challenges not with reactive emotions, but with thoughtful and measured actions. Virtue becomes the filter through which we interpret the world, and as a result, our emotional responses become less intense and more measured. For example, let us consider the virtue of wisdom. When we encounter a situation that evokes anger, such as an insult or a setback at work, the Stoic who practices wisdom will recognize that the situation does not define them. They will understand that it is not the insult that causes anger, but the belief that the insult somehow diminishes their worth. By practicing wisdom, they can detach from this erroneous judgment and respond with clarity rather than emotional outbursts. Similarly, the virtue of courage teaches us to face difficult situations without fear or avoidance. Courage enables us to confront emotional discomfort head-on, whether it's the fear of rejection, failure, or loss. Rather than succumbing to anxiety or paralysis, courage empowers us to take action in the face of adversity. This is particularly important when it comes to the emotional turbulence that arises from fear of the unknown. Courage teaches us to be unflinching in the face of life's uncertainties and to act despite our feelings of fear. Justice is another crucial virtue that enables emotional mastery, particularly in relationships with others. By acting with justice, we align ourselves with fairness, treating others as we would want to be treated. In moments of conflict, the Stoic practicing justice will seek reconciliation rather than retaliation, responding with compassion rather than anger. When we live with a sense of justice, our relationships become more harmonious and our emotional responses are rooted in respect rather than emotional reactivity. Finally, moderation, the virtue of balance and self-control, teaches us to regulate our desires, appetites, and emotional impulses. It is moderation that prevents us from being swept away by destructive emotions like greed, envy, or jealousy. By practicing moderation, we learn to temper our desires and to live in a state of equilibrium, unaffected by external forces. Moderation helps us avoid the extremes of indulgence or denial, fostering emotional stability and clarity. The Stoic virtues as a guide to emotional responses. In each of these virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation, the Stoics offer us a blueprint for emotional mastery. When we live in accordance with these virtues, we naturally become more resilient to the emotional fluctuations that can otherwise destabilize our lives. Stoicism teaches us that it is not the external events that disturb us, but our judgment about those events. When we strengthen our virtues, our judgments become more aligned with reason, and our emotional responses become more balanced and harmonious. For example, let's say that you face a situation where you are unjustly criticized at work. The typical emotional response might be anger, shame, or frustration. However, a Stoic practicing wisdom would remind themselves that this criticism does not define their worth, nor does it necessarily reflect the truth. They would understand that their value is not dependent on the approval of others. The virtue of justice would compel them to consider the fairness of the situation and whether the criticism is a reflection of a genuine concern or merely an expression of someone else's frustration. The virtue of courage would inspire them to respond to the criticism with dignity rather than retreating into defensiveness. Finally, the virtue of moderation would help them avoid overreacting, keeping their emotional responses in check and maintaining composure in the face of adversity. In this way, the Stoic virtues are not abstract ideals, but practical tools that help us navigate the emotional landscape of life. By embodying these virtues, we gain control over our emotional responses, and we become less susceptible to the turbulence of negative emotions. We are no longer slaves to our feelings, but masters of them, guided by reason, wisdom, and virtue. Building emotional resilience through the Stoic practice of acceptance. In addition to the virtues, one of the key principles of Stoicism is the practice of acceptance, accepting that which is beyond our control and finding peace in the present moment. This principle is profoundly liberating as it enables us to let go of the need to control everything around us and to focus on what we can control, our own thoughts, actions, and reactions. In his writings, Epictetus consistently emphasizes the importance of accepting what we cannot change. He famously said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." This recognition forms the foundation of emotional resilience. When we accept that there are things beyond our control, such as the actions of others, the weather, or the outcomes of events, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that arises from trying to control the uncontrollable. The practice of acceptance does not mean resignation or passivity. Rather, it is an active process of acknowledging reality as it is and choosing to respond with grace and wisdom. This acceptance allows us to build resilience as we stop fighting against the world and start working with it. We accept that life is full of uncertainties, and rather than being overwhelmed by fear or frustration, we approach each moment with a sense of calm and composure. For example, consider a scenario where you are faced with a difficult personal situation, such as the loss of a loved one. The natural emotional response might be grief, sadness, and even anger at the unfairness of life. The Stoic practice of acceptance encourages us to recognize that death is an inevitable part of the human experience, and that it is beyond our control. While we may mourn the loss, we are not consumed by anger or despair. Instead, we accept the reality of death with a sense of peace and understanding, knowing that it is a part of the natural order of life. This practice of acceptance extends beyond just accepting loss or death. It applies to all aspects of life, including challenges at work, conflicts in relationships, and personal failures. When we accept that setbacks are a natural part of the journey, we no longer allow them to dictate our emotional state. Instead, we embrace them as opportunities for growth and learning, responding with resilience rather than resistance. Stoic practices for daily life, integrating wisdom into every moment. To truly master our emotions, we must integrate Stoic practices into our daily routines. Stoicism is not a philosophy to be studied in isolation, but a way of life that must be practiced in every moment. Here are some practical Stoic techniques to help you cultivate emotional mastery on a daily basis. Morning reflection. Start each day by reflecting on what lies ahead. Consider the challenges you may face and how you can approach them with wisdom, courage, and moderation. Ask yourself, what virtues can I practice today? How can I respond with grace in the face of adversity? This morning reflection sets the tone for the day, helping you approach life with a sense of purpose and intention. Negative visualization. Practice negative visualization daily. Spend a few moments imagining the worst-case scenario in various aspects of your life, whether it's losing your job, facing criticism, or experiencing failure. By mentally preparing for the worst, you reduce your fear of loss and disappointment. You also cultivate gratitude for what you currently have, knowing that nothing in life is permanent. Mindful awareness. Throughout the day, practice mindful awareness of your thoughts and emotions. When faced with a challenge or conflict, pause and take a moment to reflect before reacting. Ask yourself, what is the belief underlying this emotion? How can I reframe this situation to align with virtue? This pause allows you to respond with clarity rather than emotional reactivity. Evening reflection. At the end of the day, take time to reflect on your actions and emotions. Consider how well you embody the Stoic virtues and where you may have fallen short. Use this reflection as an opportunity for growth and self-improvement, rather than self-criticism. Remember that the Stoic path is a lifelong journey, and each day is an opportunity to practice and refine your emotional mastery. The journey toward emotional mastery. The Stoic path to emotional mastery is not easy, nor is it quick. It requires constant effort, self-awareness, and a commitment to living in accordance with virtue. But the rewards of this path are profound. By mastering our emotions, we gain the freedom to live with greater peace, purpose, and resilience. We no longer allow external circumstances or negative emotions to control us. Instead, we become the masters of our own inner world. The Stoics teach us that life is full of challenges, but that we have the power to respond to those challenges with wisdom, courage, and grace. By cultivating the virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, we can develop the emotional resilience to face life's difficulties with equanimity. Through practices like acceptance, reframing, and mindful awareness, we learn to navigate the emotional landscape of life with calm and clarity. The journey to emotional mastery is a continuous process of growth and self-reflection. It is a path that requires discipline, patience, and commitment. But with each step, we move closer to the inner peace and strength that the Stoics believed was the true goal of life. The Stoic mindset. Shifting from victimhood to empowerment. One of the most powerful aspects of Stoic philosophy is its emphasis on personal agency and responsibility. In our modern world, it can be easy to feel like a victim of circumstances, whether it's the behavior of others, the unpredictability of life, or the challenges we face. But the Stoics teach us that we are never truly victims of our circumstances. We are always in control of how we respond. Epictetus wrote, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This understanding of personal agency is central to Stoic emotional mastery. No matter what happens to us, whether we face personal loss, failure, or conflict, we have the power to decide how we will react. The Stoics understood that our freedom lies not in external events, but in the way we choose to engage with those events. The shift from victimhood to empowerment is transformative. When we believe that we are victims of our circumstances, we give away our power. We believe that we are helpless, at the mercy of the world around us. But when we adopt the Stoic mindset, we reclaim our power. We stop blaming others or external events for our emotional state, and instead we recognize that our reactions are within our control. We learn that we are the creators of our emotional experience. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is a Stoic principle that encourages us to see obstacles not as sources of suffering, but as opportunities for growth. Every challenge becomes a chance to practice virtue. Rather than feeling defeated by difficulties, we learn to use them as tools for personal development. The Stoic mindset reframes adversity as a natural part of life, not something to fear or avoid, but something to embrace and learn from. For example, when faced with a setback, whether it's a project at work that fails, a personal goal that remains unachieved, or a conflict with a loved one, a Stoic would approach the situation with curiosity and reflection. Instead of feeling sorry for themselves or dwelling on the injustice of the situation, they would ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this experience? How can I respond with virtue?" This shift in mindset allows us to maintain emotional stability, regardless of external circumstances. We stop seeing ourselves as powerless victims and start recognizing the tremendous strength we have to shape our emotional responses. When we practice this approach, we become less likely to be swept away by anger, fear, or frustration. Instead, we meet challenges with wisdom, courage, and resilience. The power of self-sufficiency, cultivating inner strength. Another key Stoic practice is the cultivation of self-sufficiency, the ability to rely on our inner resources rather than seeking external validation or support. The Stoics believe that the truly wise person does not depend on others for their happiness or emotional well-being. Instead, they find their strength within themselves through their relationship with virtue and reason. This self-sufficiency is liberating. In our modern world, it's easy to fall into the trap of seeking approval from others, whether through social media, work recognition, or personal relationships. But when we base our self-worth on external validation, we are constantly at the mercy of the opinions and actions of others. The Stoics teach us that true happiness comes from within, not from the validation of others, but from our alignment with virtue and reason. Seneca, in his letters, spoke of the importance of cultivating independence and self-reliance. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. He emphasizes the importance of focusing on what is within our control, rather than looking for external sources of fulfillment. Self-sufficiency is about recognizing that our emotional state is not determined by the approval or disapproval of others, but by our own thoughts, actions, and responses. When we rely on our own inner strength, we free ourselves from the anxiety that arises from seeking validation. The practice of self-sufficiency encourages us to focus on developing our own character, rather than chasing after external rewards. It helps us avoid emotional instability as we no longer tie our worth to fluctuating circumstances or the opinions of others. Instead, we find our strength in the virtues we cultivate and in our ability to respond to life with reason and composure. Self-sufficiency allows us to face challenges with confidence, knowing that we have the internal resources to weather any storm. The Stoic practice of living according to nature. Another essential Stoic principle is the idea of living according to nature, living in harmony with the natural world and with the rational order of the universe. The Stoics believe that everything in the universe is governed by reason, and that true happiness comes from living in accordance with this natural order. To live according to nature is to align ourselves with the world as it is, accepting both its beauty and its challenges. Epictetus famously taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." This statement captures the essence of living in harmony with nature, accepting what is beyond our control while focusing on what we can control. It is the recognition that life is filled with uncertainties, and that we must accept the flow of events rather than resist them. By doing so, we free ourselves from the emotional burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. We stop fighting against the natural course of things and instead learn to navigate life with grace and wisdom. Living according to nature also means accepting the impermanence of life. The Stoics teach us that everything is subject to change. Our relationships, our health, our success, and even our own lives. Rather than clinging to things or fearing their loss, we learn to embrace the transient nature of existence. By practicing this acceptance, we develop emotional resilience, as we no longer become attached to outcomes or possessions. Instead, we find peace in the present moment, knowing that all things are temporary. For example, if we experience a loss, whether it's the end of a relationship or the death of a loved one, the Stoic practice of living according to nature helps us accept that loss as part of the natural order. Rather than becoming consumed by grief or despair, we understand that death is an inevitable part of life and that it is beyond our control. This acceptance allows us to mourn without becoming overwhelmed by the pain. We find solace in the knowledge that life is fleeting and that all things must eventually pass. The Stoic discipline of ataraxia, achieving tranquility of mind. One of the ultimate goals of Stoicism is to achieve ataraxia, a state of inner tranquility and peace. Ataraxia is the Stoic ideal of emotional calm, a state in which the mind is free from the turbulence of negative emotions, such as fear, anger, and anxiety. To achieve ataraxia, the Stoics teach us to cultivate mental, Discipline and emotional regulation. The discipline of ataraxia involves several key practices. First, it requires us to detach from external events and to focus on what is within our control. When we stop trying to control the uncontrollable, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil that arises from our attempts to shape the world according to our desires. Second, ataraxia involves cultivating the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. By acting in accordance with these virtues, we align our minds with reason and logic, which helps us to respond to life's challenges with calmness and composure. Ataraxia is not a state of apathy or indifference. It is the cultivation of an emotional life that is grounded in rational thought, in which we respond to the world with clarity and reason, rather than being driven by impulsive emotional reactions. It is a state of emotional self-mastery, where our feelings are not dictated by external circumstances, but by our alignment with virtue and reason. To practice ataraxia, we must regularly engage in self-reflection and mindfulness. By taking the time to examine our thoughts and emotional responses, we can identify areas where we may be allowing negative emotions to govern us. Through reflection, journaling, and the consistent application of Stoic principles, we gradually build the mental discipline needed to achieve ataraxia. Over time, we become less reactive to external events and more capable of maintaining a tranquil, peaceful mind. Living a Stoic life. Integrating philosophy into every moment. Living a Stoic life requires consistent practice and a commitment to personal growth. It is not enough to merely understand the philosophy intellectually. We must apply it in our daily lives. The Stoic path is one of continuous self-examination, reflection, and action. Each day offers countless opportunities to practice Stoicism, whether it's responding to a difficult situation with patience, reframing an emotional response with reason, or cultivating gratitude for the present moment. The Stoics teach us that philosophy is not a theoretical exercise, but a practical guide for living with integrity, resilience, and wisdom. By living according to Stoic principles, we cultivate a life of emotional mastery, where we are no longer at the mercy of our emotions or external events. Instead, we become the masters of our own minds, choosing to respond to life with calmness, clarity, and virtue. Final reflections: the Stoic path to emotional freedom. As we conclude this deep dive into Stoicism, we are reminded that the path to emotional mastery is not an easy one, but it is a profoundly rewarding journey. The Stoics provide us with a practical and actionable framework for navigating life's challenges with wisdom, courage, and grace. Through the cultivation of virtue, the practice of self-discipline, and the embrace of acceptance and equanimity, we learn to master our emotions and live with greater peace and resilience. By applying the principles of Stoicism in our daily lives, we develop the strength to face adversity, the clarity to make rational decisions, and the emotional resilience to weather any storm. Stoicism teaches us that we are not victims of our circumstances, but active participants in shaping our emotional experiences. Through the constant practice of Stoic philosophy, we can achieve a state of emotional freedom, where our inner peace is not disturbed by the world around us. The Stoic path is a lifelong journey, one of continual growth, reflection, and self-mastery. But with each step, we move closer to the wisdom and tranquility that the Stoics sought to cultivate. Let us embrace this path with determination and courage, knowing that true freedom lies not in controlling the external world, but in mastering our own minds. The role of perspective, shaping our emotions through thought. A central principle of Stoic philosophy is the idea that our emotions are not primarily caused by external events, but by the perspective we adopt towards those events. In this sense, Stoicism is deeply tied to the concept of cognitive reframing, the ability to shift our perceptions and judgments in order to influence our emotional responses. Epictetus famously taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This simple but profound insight serves as the foundation of the Stoic approach to emotional mastery. According to Stoic thought, the way we interpret any given event determines how we feel about it. It is not the event itself, but our beliefs about the event that generates emotional turmoil. This means that we have the power to control our emotions by consciously altering our judgments and perceptions. For instance, consider a situation where you are passed over for a promotion at work. The immediate emotional response might be disappointment, frustration, or resentment. However, a Stoic would challenge this emotional reaction by asking, what is my judgment about this event? Do I believe that my worth is tied to a promotion? What is the true nature of this situation and how can I reframe it? By shifting perspective, the Stoic may choose to view the situation not as a personal failure, but as an opportunity for growth, or even as an indication that they should look for new opportunities that align more closely with their values. Instead of becoming consumed with negative emotions, the Stoic adopts a mindset that sees each challenge as an opportunity for development. The key to shifting perspective lies in questioning automatic judgments. Instead of accepting the initial emotional reaction as truth, we can step back and examine whether our interpretations are based on reason. By practicing this process consistently, we can develop the ability to change our perception in real time, which helps us respond to life's challenges with emotional equanimity. This Stoic technique is not about ignoring or suppressing emotions, but about taking responsibility for the thoughts that create those emotions. In essence, it is about creating a mental filter that allows us to separate the event itself from our emotional response, thus giving us control over how we feel. In every situation, the Stoic asks, what can I learn from this? How can I respond virtuously? What is the most rational response to this challenge? The importance of social relationships in Stoic philosophy. While Stoicism is often regarded as a philosophy focused on individual strength and self-sufficiency, it also places a significant emphasis on the role of social relationships and the importance of virtue in our interactions with others. Stoic thinkers did not see emotional mastery as a solitary pursuit. Rather, they recognized that our emotional lives are deeply influenced by the people around us. The Stoic goal is not to become indifferent to others, but to cultivate relationships that are rooted in mutual respect, fairness, and the pursuit of virtue. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reflects on the importance of community and cooperation. He wrote, "What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee." This statement speaks to the interconnectedness of humanity. The Stoics believe that humans are inherently social creatures and that our actions and emotions should contribute to the well-being of the community. While we cannot control how others behave, we can control how we respond, and we can choose to act in a way that is consistent with Stoic virtues, such as justice, compassion, and respect. The Stoics also acknowledge that conflict is inevitable in relationships, as people often disagree, make mistakes, or behave in ways that challenge our values. However, rather than responding with anger or resentment, the Stoic seeks to understand the motivations of others and to respond with wisdom and fairness. In his writings, Seneca encourages us to ask ourselves, what is it about the other person's behavior that is causing me to feel this way? Can I see this person as acting out of ignorance or misunderstanding rather than malice? This approach is not about excusing poor behavior, but about responding to it with a mindset that seeks to understand rather than to react. The Stoic practice of forgiveness is an important aspect of this, as it allows us to release the emotional burden of resentment and to restore peace to our relationships. By focusing on acting with virtue in our interactions with others, the Stoics teach us that our relationships can become sources of strength rather than sources of emotional turmoil. When we align our relationships with the principles of justice, empathy, and understanding, we create an environment in which mutual respect and emotional resilience can flourish. The Stoic ideal is not isolation, but virtuous social engagement. By striving to be virtuous in our relationships, we ensure that we contribute to the well-being of others while maintaining emotional equilibrium. The Stoics did not view life's difficulties as solely personal challenges to be faced alone. Rather, they saw them as opportunities to practice social virtue, which is essential for emotional mastery. Stoic practices for sustained mental clarity and emotional mastery. As we have seen, Stoic philosophy offers many powerful tools for mastering our emotions. However, these practices require consistent application. To truly achieve emotional mastery and mental clarity, the Stoic engages in a continuous process of self-reflection, mindful awareness, and deliberate action. Here are some additional Stoic practices that can help cultivate lasting emotional resilience. The practice of daily journaling. As mentioned previously, journaling is a central practice in Stoic philosophy. Writing down our thoughts, emotions, and actions each day provides an opportunity for reflection and self-examination. Seneca often wrote letters to himself, reflecting on his own thoughts and actions, and using the process of writing to clarify his understanding of Stoic principles. Journaling helps us track our progress, learn from our mistakes, and maintain focus on what truly matters towards mindfulness of the present moment. Stoicism teaches us to focus on the present moment and to accept what is happening right now, without dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. This practice of mindfulness helps us stay grounded in reality and prevents us from becoming overwhelmed by negative emotions or fears. By focusing on what is within our control, we can avoid becoming consumed by thoughts that lead to emotional distress. The practice of reflecting on death, Pienes memento mori. One of the most important Stoic practices is the reflection on death, often referred to as memento mori, remember that you will die. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of the impermanence of life, and the Stoics use this reflection to cultivate gratitude for the present moment and to put their challenges into perspective. By acknowledging the inevitability of death, we are reminded to focus on what truly matters, to live virtuously, and to embrace life's challenges with courage. The practice of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics believed in voluntarily exposing themselves to discomfort as a way to train the mind and body to endure hardship. This practice, known as exposure to discomfort, helps us build resilience by stepping outside of our comfort zones and learning to tolerate discomfort without reacting emotionally. This can involve practices such as fasting, cold exposure, or enduring physical discomfort to develop a sense of emotional control and fortitude. The discipline of attention. The Stoics taught the importance of controlling our attention. Epictetus advised that we should focus only on what is within our control and avoid allowing our minds to be distracted by things that are irrelevant or beyond our influence. In our modern world, this practice is more important than ever, as we are constantly bombarded by distractions. The Stoic discipline of attention helps us maintain focus on our personal goals and the things that truly matter, enabling us to preserve our emotional clarity. The practice of gratitude. Gratitude is an essential part of Stoic emotional mastery. By regularly reflecting on what we are grateful for, we shift our focus away from what is lacking and toward what is abundant in our lives. This practice helps us develop a sense of contentment and peace, even in challenging circumstances. Final thoughts. The path to true emotional freedom. The Stoic path to emotional mastery is one of continuous growth and self-improvement. It requires commitment, reflection, and a willingness to confront life's challenges with courage and wisdom. The Stoics teach us that we have the power to shape our emotional lives, not by changing the world around us, but by changing the way we respond to it. As we cultivate the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, we develop emotional resilience and inner peace. By practicing Stoic techniques such as mindfulness, journaling, and voluntary discomfort, we strengthen our mental clarity and fortitude, and by focusing on perspective, relationships, and gratitude, we align ourselves with the natural flow of life, embracing both its beauty and its hardships. In the end, emotional mastery is not about achieving perfect control over our emotions, but about learning to navigate them with wisdom and grace. The Stoic journey is not an easy one, but it is a rewarding one, a path that leads to true emotional freedom, where we are no longer enslaved by our feelings, but are the masters of our own minds. The role of emotional awareness in Stoic mastery. One of the primary tools for mastering emotions according to Stoic philosophy is emotional awareness. This awareness involves becoming attuned to the emotional responses that arise within us and the ability to pause and examine these responses before we act on them. The Stoics understood that our emotions often arise from unconscious thoughts and judgments. Therefore, emotional mastery begins with becoming mindful of those reactions and gaining the self-control necessary to change them. Epictetus taught that emotions are rooted in our beliefs and judgments. He said, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." The first step in emotional mastery, then, is the practice of becoming aware of our judgments. If you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or upset, take a moment to reflect. What is it that I am believing or interpreting that is making me feel this way? For instance, imagine a situation where you feel anxious about a presentation at work. It is not the act of speaking in front of others that causes anxiety. It is the belief that you might fail or be judged negatively. By identifying this judgment, you can begin to change your perception. The Stoic approach here is to question the belief. What evidence do I have that I will fail? Have I succeeded in the past in similar situations? Can I control how others react? Or is that outside my power? Once we become aware of our judgments, we can choose to reframe them in a more rational, calm way. Stoicism teaches that we should not let emotions dictate our actions. Rather, we must be active participants in how we engage with them. This awareness and choice form the foundation of Stoic emotional mastery. Reflection and self-awareness are at the core of this practice. By regularly checking in with ourselves and examining the causes of our emotions, we build a deeper understanding of what triggers us. This helps us develop a more mindful approach to life and emotional regulation. Stoicism and the challenges of modern life. In the modern world, it often feels as though we are being pulled in many directions, constantly dealing with stress, distractions, and emotional turbulence. Stoicism, while rooted in the ancient world, provides us with practical tools to navigate the complexities of our fast-paced, often chaotic environment. By focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot, we create space for a life of greater peace, purpose, and fulfillment. One of the greatest challenges in modern life is the constant pressure to succeed. Whether that means climbing the career ladder, accumulating wealth, or achieving status. In the midst of these external pressures, the Stoics remind us that true happiness is not found in external achievements, but in living a life of virtue. In his Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reflects on the futility of seeking fame and recognition, writing, "What we do now echoes in eternity." This reminds us that our true legacy is not built through fleeting achievements, but through the integrity and wisdom we embody in each moment. Similarly, the modern world's culture of comparison, fueled by social media and the constant bombardment of others' successes, can trigger feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, or frustration. However, the Stoics remind us to avoid these distractions and to focus on our own path. Seneca wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." By focusing on personal growth, rather than comparing ourselves to others, we remove the emotional toll that comparison can exact. We come to realize that our worth is not determined by external validation, but by the quality of our character and our actions. Furthermore, the modern obsession with instant gratification, whether it's through social media likes, material possessions, or quick fixes, often fuels dissatisfaction and anxiety. The Stoics teach us to cultivate patience and the ability to delay gratification. By embracing a long-term vision of self-mastery and personal growth, we learn to focus on what truly brings meaning and fulfillment instead of chasing fleeting pleasures that ultimately leave us unfulfilled. Cultivating resilience in the face of uncertainty. Modern life is filled with uncertainty. Whether it's the unpredictable nature of our personal lives, the volatility of the global economy, or the pressures of our work environment, it can sometimes feel like we are always on the edge of chaos. The Stoics offer us a way to respond to uncertainty with resilience and poise. In his work, Seneca repeatedly emphasized that while we cannot predict or control the future, we can control how we approach it. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it, he wrote. This reflection highlights the importance of using the time we have wisely, regardless of external circumstances. Instead of worrying about what might happen tomorrow, the Stoic seeks to live in the present moment, taking actions aligned with virtue. One of the most powerful tools in the Stoic toolbox for facing uncertainty is negative visualization, or the practice of imagining the worst-case scenario. While this may seem counterintuitive, the Stoics believe that by imagining the worst, we prepare ourselves mentally for whatever life may bring. By confronting our fears and anxieties head-on, we reduce their emotional impact and build emotional resilience. This practice helps us become less attached to outcomes and more focused on how we will respond to whatever comes our way. When faced with uncertainty, the Stoic asks, "What is within my control in this situation? How can I align my actions with virtue, regardless of the outcome?" This shift in focus from external events to internal responses is the essence of Stoic resilience. Stoic exercises to strengthen emotional mastery. To ensure that Stoic principles remain grounded in daily practice, here are several practical exercises that can help cultivate emotional mastery and resilience. Morning meditation on virtue. Start each day with a short meditation where you reflect on the virtues you want to cultivate: wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. Consider how these virtues can guide your actions throughout the day and prepare yourself mentally for any challenges or emotional triggers you might face. The practice of the dichotomy of control. At the beginning of each day, remind yourself that there are things you can control and things you cannot. Focus your energy on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, while accepting that external events and the behavior of others are beyond your influence. This practice helps reduce unnecessary emotional stress. Daily reflection. In the evening, take a few minutes to reflect on your day. Ask yourself, how did I respond to challenges today? Did I act in alignment with virtue? What can I improve? This process of self-reflection helps you evaluate your emotional responses and identify areas for growth. Mindfulness in action. Throughout the day, engage in mindfulness by becoming aware of your emotional state. Notice when you feel frustrated, angry, or anxious, and take a moment to reflect on the underlying thoughts causing these emotions. This pause allows you to reframe your thinking and respond with greater clarity and calmness. Practice of gratitude. Spend a few minutes each day reflecting on what you are grateful for. This practice shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have, helping to create a sense of contentment and peace. Voluntary discomfort. Incorporate some form of voluntary discomfort into your day to build resilience. This could involve skipping a meal, taking a cold shower, or enduring physical discomfort in a controlled manner. This practice helps you develop the strength to withstand life's inevitable challenges with grace. The practice of equanimity. In stressful situations, remind yourself of the Stoic practice of equanimity, remaining calm and composed regardless of external circumstances. When you feel emotionally triggered, take a moment to pause, breathe, and remind yourself that you have the power to choose your response. Final reflections. The Stoic path to lasting emotional freedom. The path to emotional mastery, according to Stoicism, is one of deliberate practice, self-awareness, and consistent reflection. Through the cultivation of virtue, the development of emotional resilience, and the application of Stoic principles in our daily lives, we become less influenced by external events and more grounded in our own inner strength. Stoicism teaches us that true freedom lies not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering our internal world. By embracing the Stoic mindset of virtue, acceptance, and self-discipline, we cultivate the emotional resilience needed to thrive in an uncertain, ever-changing world. While this path is not always easy, it is one of profound liberation. Through Stoic practices like reframing, negative visualization, mindfulness, and reflection, we learn to face life's challenges with wisdom and grace. In the process, we become the masters of our own emotions, free from the tyranny of impulsive reactions and external forces. In embracing the Stoic way of life, we embark on a journey of continual growth, one that leads to peace, purpose, and the lasting emotional freedom that comes from aligning our actions with reason and virtue. Stoicism and the practice of self-discipline in adversity. One of the defining aspects of Stoic philosophy is its emphasis on self-discipline in the face of adversity. Life, as the Stoics would argue, is filled with challenges, and these challenges are not always within our control. However, our ability to endure these challenges with poise and virtue is entirely within our power. Seneca in his letters speaks extensively on the necessity of self-discipline, suggesting that the true test of a person's character is how they respond to adversity. He writes, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This powerful statement underscores the Stoic belief that emotional mastery is not about avoiding difficulties or pain, but rather about mastering our responses when life tests us. In difficult circumstances, whether we are facing financial stress, personal loss, or a challenging work environment, the Stoic principle of self-discipline teaches us to maintain emotional control. The Stoic does not react impulsively, nor do they surrender to negative emotions like anger, fear, or frustration. Instead, they choose to respond with patience, wisdom, and rationality. When faced with a difficult situation, the first step is to remember that we control how we react. A Stoic would advise taking a deep breath, reflecting on the situation, and asking themselves, what is within my control here? How can I act virtuously in this moment? By consciously choosing to focus on our reactions instead of the external event itself, we remove the emotional burden that would otherwise weigh us down. For example, let's say you're facing a difficult personal challenge, such as a heated argument with a close friend or partner. Instead of reacting with immediate anger or frustration, a Stoic would first take a moment to breathe and reflect. They would ask, is my reaction aligned with my values? Am I acting with justice, patience, and empathy? By doing so, we avoid impulsive reactions and maintain emotional clarity, even in the most heated moments. The Stoic practice of delaying gratification is also an important tool for maintaining self-discipline. In a world that constantly urges us to seek immediate rewards, the Stoic teaches us to resist the urge for quick fixes and instead focus on long-term goals. Whether it's avoiding the temptation to indulge in unhealthy habits, refraining from reacting angrily to provocation, or practicing patience in pursuit of our goals, self-discipline is essential to mastering our emotions. The Stoic challenge of maintaining calm in times of crisis. In times of crisis, whether personal or global, it can be easy to feel overwhelmed and helpless. Fear, panic, and anxiety often dominate our emotional state when we perceive a threat, and we can feel as if the world is spinning out of control. However, Stoicism provides a powerful framework for maintaining emotional clarity and calm in the face of crisis. The Stoic response to crisis is to acknowledge the reality of the situation without letting our emotions take over. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This idea captures the core of Stoic resilience. We cannot control external events, but we can always control how we respond to them. When confronted with a crisis, the Stoic first seeks to dispel any fear or panic by accepting that certain things are beyond our control. If we are facing a personal crisis, such as the loss of a job, a health issue, or a relationship breakdown, the Stoic reframes the event. Instead of viewing the situation as an insurmountable obstacle, the Stoic asks, what is within my control here? What can I learn from this situation? How can I grow stronger and more virtuous by facing this challenge head-on? By adopting this mindset, we maintain our emotional composure and shift our focus from the external event to our internal responses. In the face of a crisis, the Stoic is not consumed by emotional chaos. Instead, they remain calm, reflective, and focused on taking thoughtful action based on wisdom, reason, and virtue. For example, during a global crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic, Stoicism offers a way to navigate the anxiety and uncertainty. Rather than being paralyzed by fear or frustration over factors beyond our control, the Stoic focus is on what is within our grasp, how we take care of ourselves, how we help others, and how we maintain a sense of purpose and resilience. Marcus Aurelius himself faced numerous crises during his reign as emperor, and he often used his personal struggles as a way to practice Stoic resilience. His advice remains ever relevant. The obstacle on the path becomes the path. The importance of community and social responsibility in Stoicism. Though Stoicism is often considered a philosophy of individual self-mastery, it is equally concerned with our role in society and our relationships with others. Stoicism teaches us that we are social beings, and as such, we have a responsibility to contribute to the well-being of others. Our emotional responses are not just a reflection of our own internal state, they are also shaped by the people around us and our interactions with them. The Stoic ideal of cosmopolitanism, the belief that all humans are part of a global community, reminds us that our actions should be guided by justice and compassion. Seneca emphasized this principle by writing, "We are not born for ourselves alone. Our lives are intertwined with others, and our pursuit of virtue should extend beyond personal growth to include the service of others." In our personal relationships, the Stoic approach to emotional mastery involves empathy, understanding, and constructive action. When faced with conflict or difficulty in relationships, the Stoic responds with the understanding that others' actions and emotions are beyond our control. Instead of reacting with anger, resentment, or frustration, the Stoic seeks to act with justice, temperance, and fairness. In practice, this could mean approaching a difficult conversation with a loved one or a colleague with patience and humility, listening carefully, and responding thoughtfully. Marcus Aurelius reflects, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This embodies the Stoic response to interpersonal conflict. We do not let the actions of others dictate our emotional state. Instead, we act in accordance with virtue, choosing empathy and understanding even in the face of mistreatment. Stoicism encourages us to view our relationships not as sources of emotional turbulence, but as opportunities for virtuous action. The Stoic path calls for us to develop strong, supportive relationships that are rooted in mutual respect in the shared goal of living virtuously. By focusing on the common good, we contribute to the overall emotional well-being of ourselves and others. Stoicism and the path to lasting fulfillment. While modern culture often encourages us to seek fulfillment through external achievements, material wealth, success, or social status, the Stoics teach us that true fulfillment comes from living a life of virtue and wisdom. Happiness, according to Stoicism, is not dependent on what happens to us, but on how we respond to what happens. By cultivating the Stoic virtues of wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, we shift our focus away from transient external rewards and toward the internal peace that comes from living a life aligned with reason and virtue. True fulfillment comes from living a life where our actions are guided by rational thought, not by the whims of our emotions. The Stoic concept of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing or living in accordance with nature, is central to this pursuit of fulfillment. It represents a life where we are not controlled by external events or fleeting pleasures, but where we are guided by our highest principles. Marcus Aurelius summed this up by saying, "A man's worth is no greater than his ambitions." In Stoicism, our worth is defined not by external success, but by the integrity of our character and the consistency of our virtuous actions. Stoic affirmations for emotional mastery and resilience. As a final tool for fostering emotional mastery and resilience, consider incorporating Stoic affirmations into your daily practice. These affirmations are short statements or reflections based on Stoic principles that help strengthen your mindset and maintain emotional clarity. Here are a few examples to get you started. I control my reactions to events, and I choose to respond with wisdom and virtue. Every challenge I face is an opportunity for growth and development. I accept what is beyond my control and focus on what I can influence. My worth is not defined by external circumstances, but by my character and actions. I will act with patience and compassion, even in the face of difficulty. I will maintain my calm and clarity, regardless of what happens around me. These affirmations serve as daily reminders of the Stoic principles that guide us toward emotional mastery. By repeating them regularly, we reinforce our commitment to living virtuously and responding to life's challenges with grace and resilience. Final reflections: the ever-evolving Stoic path. The Stoic journey is one of continual growth and self-reflection. Emotional mastery is not a final destination, but an ongoing process, a path that requires patience, mindfulness, and the continual application of Stoic principles. By cultivating the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation, we gain the emotional resilience needed to face the inevitable challenges of life with equanimity and purpose. Through the consistent practice of self-discipline, reflection, and virtue, we free ourselves from the emotional turmoil caused by external events and find lasting fulfillment in living according to nature and reason. Stoicism teaches us that true happiness lies not in seeking external validation or avoiding difficulties, but in aligning our actions with virtue and living a life of wisdom and integrity. In this way, Stoic philosophy provides a profound roadmap to emotional freedom, one that offers clarity, strength, and resilience in the face of life's uncertainties. Stoicism and productivity. Harnessing focus and purpose. One of the most challenging aspects of modern life is managing distractions. With the constant barrage of notifications, social media updates, and an ever-expanding list of tasks, it can be difficult to maintain focus and live with intention. Stoicism offers powerful tools for managing distractions and cultivating a life of purpose and focus. At the core of Stoic productivity is the understanding that our time is limited, and therefore, we must focus on what is truly important. Seneca, in his essay on the shortness of life, argues that people squander their time on trivial matters and fail to use their time wisely. He writes, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." The Stoic way of overcoming distractions involves the practice of intentional focus. In his writings, Epictetus urges us to recognize the impermanence of life and the importance of staying focused on what we can control. When we focus on our values and priorities, we avoid the distractions that would pull us away from our true purpose. Applying Stoic practices to increase productivity. To implement Stoic principles in boosting productivity and maintaining focus, consider the following practices. Identify and prioritize what matters most. The Stoics believed in living a life of purpose, not being at the mercy of external circumstances or distractions. Take time at the beginning of each day to clarify what matters most. What are your goals? What tasks will bring you closer to those goals? Eliminate unnecessary distractions and commit to those priorities. Mindful work. Instead of multitasking, which scatters your attention, Stoicism teaches the value of focusing on one task at a time. While working, practice the Stoic mindset of being fully present, performing each task with intention and excellence. This practice helps eliminate distractions and allows you to give each action the focus it deserves. Set clear, measurable goals. Stoic discipline is tied to setting clear goals that are aligned with personal values. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, would reflect on his role as emperor, reminding himself of the duties he was tasked with and how to fulfill them with wisdom and justice. In a modern context, we can apply this by setting clear, measurable goals that reflect what we want to achieve, staying true to our values and avoiding the lure of trivial tasks. Take breaks with purpose. The Stoics understood the value of balancing work with rest. Seneca emphasized that relaxation and leisure should be purposeful and restorative, not mindless indulgence. During breaks, practice mindful relaxation, whether through reading, meditating, or simply taking a walk. This refuels your energy and ensures that your productivity remains consistent throughout the day. Manage expectations. A key Stoic principle for increasing productivity is to recognize that not everything will go according to plan. Life is unpredictable and obstacles will arise. Instead of being frustrated by these setbacks, the Stoic accepts them as part of the process. Adjust your expectations and focus on adapting to the present moment with resilience. By controlling your responses to setbacks, you avoid wasting emotional energy on frustration or disappointment. Self-discipline and time management. Stoicism requires a strict form of time management, understanding that time is our most precious resource. Daily reflection and intentional time blocking can help align your actions with your values, ensuring that you spend your time meaningfully and productively. Stoic practices for overcoming negative thoughts and self-doubt. Even the most emotionally resilient among us can face moments of self-doubt and negative thinking. In times of difficulty, we may begin to question our abilities, second-guess ourselves, or feel as though we are failing in the face of adversity. Stoicism offers a robust framework for managing these negative emotions and transforming them into opportunities for growth. The Stoics viewed negative thoughts as judgments, not facts. When we experience self-doubt, frustration, or fear, these are often the result of internal beliefs and judgments that we hold. Rather than being overwhelmed by these feelings, the Stoics encourage us to reflect on our thoughts and challenge the underlying beliefs that are causing them. Techniques for managing negative thoughts. Cognitive reframing. The Stoics practiced cognitive reframing to reinterpret situations that would otherwise provoke negative emotions. For example, Marcus Aurelius would frequently remind himself that difficulties were opportunities for practicing virtue. If he was faced with criticism, he would ask, "Is this criticism constructive? What can I learn from this?" By reframing negative situations, we shift our perspective and reduce the emotional power of negative thoughts. Self-affirmation through virtue. When faced with self-doubt, focus on your commitment to virtue. Remind yourself that your worth is not defined by external achievements or outcomes, but by your character and integrity. Reflect on the actions you've taken in alignment with Stoic virtues, wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, and take pride in these efforts, independent of the result. The practice of journaling. Journaling is a powerful tool to help process negative thoughts. As you write down your feelings, examine them with a critical eye. Ask yourself, are these thoughts rational? What evidence do I have to support them? How can I shift my thinking to align with reason and virtue? By consistently journaling about your emotional responses, you begin to recognize the thought patterns that contribute to self-doubt and actively work to change them. Negative visualization. This Stoic exercise encourages us to imagine the worst-case scenario to reduce fear and anxiety. If you're doubting your abilities or fearing failure, imagine what would happen if you failed. How would you handle it? What would you learn from the experience? This practice helps you realize that the consequences of failure are not as catastrophic as they may initially appear. It also helps build resilience in accepting the impermanence of success and failure alike. Focus on effort, not outcome. In the Stoic worldview, we have control over our efforts, but not over outcomes. By focusing on doing your best rather than worrying about results, you relieve yourself of unnecessary pressure. The Stoic approach is to take pride in the process itself, doing your work with excellence and integrity, rather than becoming fixated on external measures of success. Epictetus taught, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The view from above exercise. A visualization technique practiced by Marcus Aurelius in his meditations is the view from above. He would often mentally detach from the immediate circumstances and imagine himself as a part of the larger universe. This perspective helps to diminish the sense of individual insignificance and reminds us that, in the grand scheme of things, our problems are temporary and manageable. Stoicism and the pursuit of true happiness. In modern society, happiness is often associated with pleasure, material success, or the absence of suffering. Stoicism, however, teaches us that true happiness is not dependent on fleeting pleasures or external conditions, but on our ability to live virtuously in accordance with reason. Epictetus succinctly expressed this in his famous quote, "Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within your control, and some things are not." This is the Stoic path to happiness, the realization that we cannot control external events, but we can control our judgments and responses to those events. True happiness, according to Stoicism, comes from living a life of virtue and reason. Key Stoic practices for achieving fulfillment. Pursue virtue over pleasure. Stoicism teaches that virtue is the only true good. All external factors, wealth, fame, pleasure, are indifferent, meaning they do not contribute to lasting happiness. Instead of seeking pleasure or external rewards, focus on cultivating virtues like wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. This internal focus leads to a sense of deep fulfillment and lasting happiness that is independent of external circumstances. Living in alignment with nature, Stoicism encourages us to live in harmony with the natural world and to accept life's challenges with equanimity. Recognizing that we are part of a larger whole gives us perspective and helps us focus on what is truly meaningful. Marcus Aurelius constantly reflected on the transient nature of life and sought to live each day in alignment with nature's flow, accepting both the good and bad as part of a larger design. Gratitude and reflection. Regularly practice gratitude for the things you have, not just for material goods, but for relationships, health, and the opportunities before you. Gratitude fosters a sense of contentment and appreciation for life as it is. Reflecting on your own progress and growth, even in moments of difficulty, will help you realize that fulfillment comes from within and from living according to your highest values. Embrace challenges as opportunities. Each obstacle is an opportunity to practice virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Whether dealing with work stress, personal challenges, or external crises, the Stoic embraces these moments as opportunities for growth, realizing that difficulties refine us and help us develop strength and wisdom. Final thoughts. The lifelong path of Stoic mastery. The journey toward emotional mastery through Stoicism is one that requires ongoing practice and continual self-reflection. By embracing Stoic principles, such as reframing our perceptions, focusing on what we can control, cultivating virtue, and responding to challenges with resilience, we can navigate life's uncertainties with wisdom and grace. The Stoic way is not a path to perfection, but to consistent self-improvement and emotional stability. Through the conscious practice of mindfulness, discipline, reflection, and perspective, we grow stronger and more resilient, capable of facing whatever life presents with equanimity and purpose. The Stoic path is one that leads us not toward an escape from difficulty, but toward the ability to face it with courage, understanding, and tranquility. The more we integrate these practices into our daily lives, the closer we come to living a life of true emotional freedom, where we are not slaves to our emotions, but masters of our responses. Stoicism and the power of self-reliance. A key element of Stoic emotional mastery is the ability to cultivate self-reliance. This does not mean being isolated or disconnected from others, but rather developing a mindset and set of habits that allow us to draw strength from within rather than from external validation or circumstances. Self-reliance in Stoic terms is the foundation of emotional stability, recognizing that ultimately we are responsible for our emotional state and mental well-being. Epictetus highlights this point clearly in his writings, asserting that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This suggests that our emotional satisfaction is not contingent upon external wealth, status, or possessions, but on our ability to govern our desires and cultivate contentment with what we have. By developing inner self-reliance, we free ourselves from the emotional chaos that comes from dependence on external circumstances. We stop chasing fleeting satisfactions and instead learn to cultivate a deeper peace that comes from understanding and mastering our internal world. The role of self-reliance in facing adversity. One of the greatest challenges of modern life is our tendency to look outside ourselves for comfort and reassurance, particularly in times of adversity. The Stoics, however, teach us that emotional stability comes not from relying on others to lift us up, but from developing the strength and wisdom to navigate challenges on our own. Marcus Aurelius exemplified this in his Meditations, where he frequently reflected on the idea that inner strength and virtue were the ultimate sources of resilience. When we face hardships, whether they are personal crises, professional setbacks, or societal pressures, the Stoic approach is to turn inward and ask, what can I control in this situation? How can I act with virtue despite external challenges? This self-reliance comes from trusting in our ability to manage our own thoughts and emotions. It doesn't mean that we reject support from others, but that we recognize that the most important support we can receive is the one we give ourselves through thoughtful reflection, emotional regulation, and adherence to our values. By consistently practicing self-reliance, we train ourselves to become more resilient in the face of adversity. We learn to lean on our virtues, wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation as our ultimate source of strength. The Stoic practice of self-control and temptation. Self-control, another key Stoic virtue, is essential to mastering our emotions. In today's world, temptation comes in many forms: instant gratification, indulgence, overconsumption, or even emotional reactivity. The Stoic believes that true freedom lies in the ability to control our impulses, thoughts, and behaviors, and to act in accordance with reason rather than fleeting desires. Seneca frequently writes about the importance of temperance, the virtue that helps us maintain self-control and avoid being consumed by excess. He writes, "No man is free who is not master of himself." True freedom, for the Stoic, is not about being able to act without restraint, but about choosing to act in ways that align with our higher purpose and values. Self-control is a practice of aligning our actions with long-term goals, rather than giving in to short-term impulses that ultimately lead us away from emotional peace. In practice, self-control can manifest in several ways. Resisting instant gratification. In an age of constant distractions, the Stoic practice of self-control requires us to resist the temptation of instant pleasure. Whether it's indulging in unhealthy food, procrastinating on important work, or reacting impulsively to a situation, the Stoic ask themselves, is this aligned with my values? What is the long-term benefit of acting with temperance? Mindful consumption. This is the act of being conscious of the information, food, and distractions we consume daily. Rather than mindlessly scrolling through social media or overindulging in material goods, the Stoic practices mindfulness and moderation. The Stoic does not seek pleasure for pleasure's sake, but chooses wisely what brings them true fulfillment, be it knowledge, healthy relationships, or activities aligned with their values. Emotional regulation. The Stoic practice of emotional regulation involves resisting the urge to react impulsively when confronted with emotional triggers. Whether it's anger, jealousy, or frustration, the Stoic response is to take a step back, reflect on the underlying thoughts, and respond with reason. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." We do not need to be slaves to our emotions. We have the power to choose our response. Stoic mindfulness, living fully in the present moment. Another crucial Stoic practice is mindfulness, the art of living fully in the present moment. The Stoics understood that focusing on the past or future can rob us of our peace of mind, leading to feelings of regret or anxiety. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote about the importance of staying grounded in the present, observing the world with a clear and open mind. In Meditations, he advises, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and around it the boiling waters are quieted and settled." This teaching of mindfulness encourages us to accept the present as it is, with all of its challenges, triumphs, and uncertainties, without becoming overwhelmed by emotional reactions to what has happened or might happen. We focus on what we can control in the present moment, and we respond with the virtues of wisdom and courage. Stoic mindfulness practices for everyday life. The morning reflection. A simple Stoic practice for cultivating mindfulness is to begin each day with a brief reflection. Before rushing into the day's activities, take a moment to reflect on what lies ahead. What challenges might you face? What can you control? What virtues can you practice today? This morning reflection sets the tone for the day and helps you focus on living intentionally. The pause technique. During the day, when faced with an emotional reaction or challenge, practice pausing. Take a moment to breathe deeply and center yourself before responding. Epictetus teaches that we can always choose how we respond to a situation. This pause gives you the space to think rationally rather than reacting impulsively. End of day reflection. At the close of the day, reflect on your actions, your emotional reactions, and your overall approach to the day. Did you live according to your values? Did you act with virtue? Or did you give in to distractions or unhealthy emotional responses? This practice of self-examination helps you refine your emotional mastery over time as you continuously adjust your thoughts and actions in alignment with Stoic principles. The role of acceptance in Stoic emotional mastery. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the practice of acceptance, not as a passive resignation, but as an active engagement with reality as it is. The Stoics believe that we should accept the things that are beyond our control and focus on what we can influence. Marcus Aurelius states, "Accept the things to which fate binds you and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart." Acceptance in Stoicism is a key tool for emotional mastery. When we accept the inherent uncertainty and unpredictability of life, we stop wasting emotional energy on resisting reality. Instead, we learn to navigate life's challenges with equanimity and calmness. Applying acceptance in daily life. Accepting loss. Whether we experience the loss of a loved one, a failed project, or a setback in our personal growth, Stoicism teaches us to accept that loss is a natural part of life. The Stoic practice is not to deny grief or sadness, but to allow ourselves to feel those emotions without letting them consume us. By accepting loss, we allow ourselves to heal and move forward, learning from the experience rather than dwelling on it. Accepting discomfort. Life inevitably involves physical or emotional discomfort. Instead of avoiding or resenting discomfort, the Stoic practices acceptance. Whether it's the discomfort of an illness, an unpleasant situation at work, or even the discomfort of sitting with difficult emotions, the Stoic embraces discomfort as an opportunity for growth. In doing so, we develop the resilience to handle any challenge with greater grace. Accepting what we cannot control. One of the most powerful Stoic practices is recognizing what is beyond our control. The Stoic practices of focusing on internal responses and detaching from external outcomes help us maintain peace of mind. When we accept that we cannot control other people's behavior, global events, or external circumstances, we liberate ourselves from the emotional burden of trying to change things beyond our influence. The lifelong practice of Stoic emotional mastery. The Stoic path to emotional mastery is not a destination, but a lifelong practice. It is a continual process of reflection, adaptation, and growth. Stoicism teaches us that emotional resilience is not something that happens overnight, but something we cultivate every day through intentional actions, mindful self-reflection, and the consistent application of virtue. Through the development of self-reliance, self-discipline, and acceptance, we free ourselves from emotional chaos and cultivate lasting peace. By embracing Stoic principles such as mindfulness, cognitive reframing, and the practice of virtue, we build a life of purpose and emotional freedom, no matter the challenges that arise. In the face of adversity, the Stoic remains calm, steadfast, and grounded, knowing that the ultimate goal is not the avoidance of hardship, but the ability to live virtuously in the face of it. The Stoic path is a journey that leads us toward the highest form of emotional freedom, freedom from the tyranny of uncontrolled emotions, and freedom to live in accordance with our highest principles. Stoicism and emotional intelligence, understanding and mastering our emotions. One of the most powerful outcomes of practicing Stoicism is the cultivation of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence refers to the ability to recognize, understand, and manage our own emotions, while also recognizing and influencing the emotions of others. While Stoicism is often thought of in terms of emotional control, it is equally about emotional awareness and emotional understanding. Epictetus famously said, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." This teaching underscores the fact that our emotional responses are largely shaped by how we perceive the world. Therefore, one of the key aspects of emotional intelligence from a Stoic perspective is recognizing that we have the power to choose our reactions. The 4 pillars of emotional intelligence in Stoicism. Stoicism and emotional intelligence go hand in hand, particularly when we consider the following four key pillars. Self-awareness. The Stoic practice of self-awareness involves becoming conscious of our emotional states, thoughts, and behaviors. Before reacting impulsively, a Stoic practices reflection, questioning why they feel a certain way and whether that reaction aligns with virtue. Journaling, a central Stoic practice, serves as an excellent tool for building self-awareness, helping us observe our emotional responses and the underlying beliefs driving them. Self-regulation. Self-regulation refers to the ability to manage and control our emotions in a healthy, productive way. The Stoics believe that by practicing emotional restraint and deliberate reflection, we could prevent our emotions from controlling us. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reflected on the need to reframe his emotions before reacting, often asking himself, "What is within my control here? What is the virtuous response?" By choosing to pause and reflect, we develop the ability to regulate our emotional reactions and respond more thoughtfully. Empathy. While Stoicism is often viewed as an individualistic philosophy, it is also concerned with our relationships with others. Empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, is central to living virtuously. Seneca emphasized that as social beings, our emotions are intertwined with the well-being of others. A Stoic does not respond with emotional reactivity to someone else's behavior, but rather seeks to understand their motivations and respond with compassion and justice. By practicing empathy, we deepen our relationships and contribute positively to the emotional climate of our interactions. Social skills. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of living harmoniously with others. The Stoic believes that our emotional responses in social situations should be guided by wisdom and virtue. Rather than reacting impulsively to criticism or conflict, the Stoic cultivates the ability to listen attentively, respond with respect, and act with fairness. These skills contribute to strong, harmonious relationships and enable us to navigate complex social dynamics with grace and emotional intelligence. By integrating these four pillars, self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skills into our lives, we foster emotional intelligence that allows us to respond to life's challenges with clarity, resilience, and a sense of inner peace. Stoicism and the pursuit of true happiness. A path to inner contentment. The pursuit of happiness is often viewed in terms of achieving external success, career milestones, financial wealth, and social validation. However, Stoicism offers a radical redefinition of happiness, one that is independent of external circumstances and rooted in our internal state. According to Stoic philosophers, true happiness is achieved through virtue in the alignment of our actions with our rational nature. Happiness for the Stoic is not found in external possessions or fleeting pleasures, but in the cultivation of virtues such as wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. The Stoics' goal is to develop a life where our actions are guided by reason and where we focus on the things we can control, not the things that are beyond our power. The Stoic definition of happiness. For Marcus Aurelius, happiness was closely tied to acceptance and gratitude. In his Meditations, he constantly reflects on the fleeting nature of life and reminds himself to focus on living virtuously. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This underscores the Stoic belief that happiness is not a product of external factors, but of our inner mindset and perspective. In contrast to the pursuit of pleasure or material success, the Stoic approach to happiness emphasizes inner tranquility and resilience. It is the ability to face life's inevitable difficulties without being overwhelmed by them, to respond to adversity with equanimity, and to live in alignment with our highest values. The Stoic path to true fulfillment. To pursue true happiness, the Stoic focuses on the following principles. Living in accordance with nature. Stoicism teaches that we should live in accordance with the natural world and our own rational nature. By aligning our actions with reason, we foster inner harmony and peace. This means accepting life's impermanence and finding peace in the present moment, rather than clinging to fleeting pleasures or worldly achievements. Cultivating virtue, the Stoic believes that the only true good is virtue, living in accordance with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. By cultivating virtue, we create a life that is fulfilling and meaningful, regardless of external outcomes. This belief in virtue as the highest good allows the Stoic to maintain inner peace even in the face of hardship or adversity. Focus on what you can control. True happiness, according to Stoicism, comes from focusing on the things that are within our control, our thoughts, actions, and responses. We cannot control external events, but we can control how we respond to them. By focusing on what we can influence and letting go of what is beyond our control, we free ourselves from the emotional burden of frustration, anxiety, or disappointment. Acceptance of what life brings. The Stoic mindset encourages acceptance of life's uncertainties, its challenges, and its inevitable setbacks. By accepting that life will bring both pleasure and pain, success and failure, we are able to face each experience with calmness and perspective. We do not fight against the flow of life, but embrace it with gratitude and openness. Practice of gratitude. Stoicism encourages us to practice gratitude for the present moment, recognizing the abundance of what we already have. By focusing on the positive aspects of life, our relationships, health, and opportunities, we cultivate a sense of inner fulfillment. Gratitude helps us detach from the constant desire for more and teaches us to appreciate the present. As Marcus Aurelius reminded us, be content with what you have, for you are richer than you know. Integrating Stoicism into daily life. Building a routine for emotional mastery. The key to making Stoicism an effective tool for emotional mastery is consistency. The Stoics were not advocates of occasional reflection, but believed that their philosophy should be integrated into daily life, becoming an integral part of how we approach each moment. To live according to Stoic principles, consider the following daily practices. Morning reflection. Start your day by reflecting on the challenges you may face and how you can respond with virtue. This practice sets the tone for the day and helps you prepare emotionally. Consider what virtues you wish to practice: wisdom, courage, patience, and how you can embody them in your actions. Mindful awareness. Throughout the day, practice mindfulness by observing your thoughts and emotions. When faced with a difficult situation or a negative emotional reaction, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what is within my control here? How can I respond with reason and virtue? Evening reflection. Before going to bed, reflect on your actions throughout the day. Consider how well you adhered to Stoic principles, where you succeeded and where you can improve. This daily practice of self-reflection helps you refine your emotional responses and align your actions with your core values. Daily gratitude. Take a moment each day to reflect on what you are grateful for. Whether it's the relationships in your life, the opportunities you've had, or simply the ability to face each day with purpose. Gratitude fosters emotional contentment and helps shift your focus from what is lacking to what is abundant. Cultivating acceptance. Practice accepting the things that are beyond your control. When faced with challenges, focus on what you can change: your thoughts, responses, and actions. This practice of acceptance frees you from the emotional burden of trying to control external events and allows you to approach life with calmness and clarity. The Stoic path to lasting fulfillment and emotional mastery. The Stoic path to emotional mastery is a journey of self-reflection, virtue, and inner peace. By integrating Stoic principles into our daily lives, we learn to live in accordance with reason and nature, cultivating emotional resilience and a sense of purpose. Rather than seeking happiness from external circumstances, we find fulfillment in living virtuously and in responding to life's challenges with wisdom, courage, and acceptance. The Stoic mindset teaches us that true happiness lies not in avoiding difficulties, but in embracing them with grace and virtue. It is through the consistent practice of Stoicism, through daily reflection, mindfulness, and emotional regulation, that we cultivate the emotional strength and resilience needed to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. As we continue on the Stoic path, we recognize that life is full of both joy and hardship. But by aligning our actions with virtue and focusing on what is within our control, we find peace and fulfillment regardless of what life may bring. Stoicism and handling setbacks, turning adversity into opportunity. Life is full of setbacks, challenges, and moments of failure. Whether it's a career setback, a personal mistake, or an unexpected turn of events, we all face times when things don't go as planned. The Stoics, however, teach us to embrace these moments, not as failures, but as opportunities to practice virtue and build emotional resilience. Stoicism, at its core, teaches us that how we respond to challenges determines the strength of our character. Epictetus famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This core Stoic insight invites us to shift our focus from the event itself to our response. Setbacks and failures are inevitable parts of life, but we have the ability to decide how we will respond to them. Rather than allowing setbacks to define us or destroy our emotional peace, Stoicism teaches us to see them as opportunities to grow. The Stoic view of failure and adversity. One of the most profound aspects of Stoicism is its view on adversity. Marcus Aurelius frequently wrote about how challenges, failures, and discomfort were natural aspects of life. In Meditations, he reflects, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This philosophy teaches us that obstacles are not something to avoid or be afraid of, but rather they are opportunities for growth. Every difficulty becomes an opportunity to practice the Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. When we encounter a setback, the Stoic response is to reflect on the situation with calmness and perspective. We do not allow ourselves to be consumed by frustration or disappointment. Instead, we ask ourselves, what can I learn from this? How can I respond with virtue and wisdom? How can I grow from this experience? By shifting our focus from the emotional turmoil of failure to the lessons we can learn, we transform setbacks into stepping stones on the path to personal growth. For example, if you experience a professional failure, instead of dwelling on feelings of inadequacy or resentment, a Stoic would look for opportunities within the failure. They might ask, what can I learn from this situation that will make me a better professional in the future? How can I improve my skills or perspective? This process of reframing allows us to transform failure into growth and emotional resilience. The Stoic virtues as tools for resilience. When setbacks occur, it is easy to become emotionally overwhelmed. However, Stoicism provides us with a toolbox of virtues to navigate these emotional storms and maintain our composure. Wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to make decisions based on rational thought rather than emotional impulse. When faced with a setback, the Stoic must first apply wisdom. Rather than reacting impulsively with anger or frustration, they ask themselves, what is the best course of action here? How can I approach this situation logically and with clarity? Courage. Courage is not just physical bravery, but the mental and emotional strength to face adversity. When confronted with a challenge, courage allows us to confront the situation head-on without avoiding or denying it. Whether it's a difficult conversation or an overwhelming workload, courage enables us to face these challenges with dignity and resolve. Justice. In Stoic terms, justice is about fairness and acting with integrity. In the face of setbacks, justice encourages us to respond in a way that aligns with our values, to act with fairness, even in the face of disappointment. This may mean addressing mistakes honestly, working to repair relationships, or simply responding to challenges with a sense of equity. Moderation. Moderation teaches us to avoid extremes. When faced with a setback, the Stoic knows that reacting excessively with anger, guilt, or frustration is not helpful. Instead, they strive to maintain balance, viewing the setback with reason and taking measured action. Moderation helps us remain emotionally stable, avoiding rash decisions or burnout, turning setbacks into strength. When life doesn't go as planned, a key Stoic tool is the practice of negative visualization, imagining the worst-case scenario and mentally preparing ourselves for it. This may seem counterintuitive, but the Stoics believe that by imagining failure or loss, we prepare ourselves emotionally for the challenges life will inevitably bring. In turn, when the setback occurs, we are able to face it with a sense of composure and perspective. We've already mentally prepared for the worst, so when adversity arrives, it no longer overwhelms us. Moreover, Seneca taught that setbacks are a natural part of life's process. Difficulty is what wakes up the genius, he said. Setbacks, in this sense, are opportunities for transformation. They help us build the mental resilience needed to face bigger challenges in the future. By embracing difficulties as opportunities for personal growth, we can begin to reshape how we view failure. Building emotional resilience. Practicing Stoicism daily. To truly master emotions and build resilience, Stoicism requires us to incorporate its teachings into our daily lives. It is not a philosophy to be studied in isolation or only applied when facing crises. It is a way of life that must be practiced consistently. The following practices can help us develop emotional resilience day by day and continue to grow through life's inevitable challenges. Marcus Aurelius would begin his day by reminding himself of his role in the world and what challenges lay ahead. You can do the same by considering, what is within my control today? What difficulties might arise? How can I respond with virtue and wisdom? By reflecting each morning, you set a proactive mindset, preparing yourself mentally to face whatever the day might bring. The practice of cognitive reframing. When difficult situations arise during the day, practice cognitive reframing. If you encounter a setback, instead of focusing on the emotional distress, ask, what can I learn from this experience? How can I use this challenge as an opportunity to grow stronger? By viewing each challenge through the lens of personal growth, you begin to shift your focus from suffering to growth. For example, if you make a mistake at work, instead of berating yourself, ask, what led to this mistake? What can I do differently next time to improve? This reframing allows you to turn frustration into productive reflection. 3. Evening reflection and gratitude. In the evening, practice self-reflection. Look back on your day and consider, did I act according to my Stoic values? Was I patient, courageous, and wise? Did I respond to challenges with equanimity, or did I react emotionally? Use this reflection to learn from your experiences and continue refining your emotional responses. Also, take a moment each night to practice gratitude. Reflect on what went well during the day, what you are grateful for, and the opportunities for growth that the day provided. Gratitude helps you focus on the positive, even during difficult times, reinforcing the Stoic understanding that contentment comes from within, not from external circumstances. Living stoically in a world full of distractions. In the modern world, it is easy to become distracted, whether by work demands, social media, consumerism, or the pressures of society. Stoicism, however, encourages us to live intentionally and focus on what truly matters. Living in accordance with Stoic principles requires us to block out distractions, engage in mindful actions, and remain aligned with our higher goals. Minimizing distractions, limit external inputs. The Stoics believe that we should not allow our minds to be filled with unnecessary distractions. Seneca warned against wasting time on trivial matters, and Epictetus advised focusing on what we can control. Practically, this means minimizing distractions like excessive social media use, unnecessary news consumption, or mindless entertainment. Instead, devote time to meaningful work, relationships, and personal growth. Set boundaries. Set clear boundaries with your time and energy. When you prioritize what is important, such as personal growth, relationships, and health, you naturally reduce the impact of distractions. The Stoic goal is to ensure that each action is deliberate and aligned with your values, rather than reacting impulsively to external pressures. Mindful technology use. Modern technology often steals our attention and emotional energy. The Stoic approach would be to use technology mindfully, only for what serves our higher purpose, not as a source of distraction or anxiety. Set time limits for your technology use, and be intentional with how you engage with it. For example, You might set times in the day when you check social media or emails, and outside of those times, refrain from checking them. Focus on the present moment. The Stoic practice of focusing on the present moment helps reduce unnecessary distractions and emotional turbulence. By accepting that the present is all we truly have, we can practice deep focus in whatever task we are engaged in. Whether it's work, exercise, or a conversation, the Stoic aims to give full attention to the present task, not allowing the mind to wander or be consumed by past regrets or future anxieties. Embracing Stoic resilience for a life of purpose. The Stoic path is not about avoiding pain, discomfort, or failure. It is about building the resilience to face these challenges with wisdom, virtue, and emotional balance. Life's setbacks and difficulties are not to be feared, but embraced as opportunities for growth. Stoicism teaches us that emotional mastery comes from our ability to choose our reactions and act in accordance with reason, not being enslaved by our impulses or external circumstances. Through daily practices like morning reflection, cognitive reframing, emotional regulation, and the consistent cultivation of virtue, we develop the resilience needed to navigate life's trials with grace and clarity. Stoicism gives us the tools to build a life that is not defined by the ups and downs of fate, but by our commitment to live virtuously and with purpose. By following the Stoic path, we transform obstacles into opportunities, cultivate inner peace amidst chaos, and ultimately find true freedom. Freedom from our emotional turmoil and freedom to live in alignment with our highest values. The Stoic life is one of continuous growth, and each challenge is an opportunity to practice the virtues that lead to a meaningful and fulfilling existence. Stoicism and the art of patience. Patience is often seen as a virtue, but in Stoic thought, it is much more than that. It is an essential component of emotional mastery. The Stoics understood that life does not always unfold according to our desires, and impatience only leads to frustration, anger, and distress. Instead of succumbing to impatience, the Stoics believed in embracing delayed gratification and remaining steadfast in the face of obstacles and delays. In the world today, where instant gratification is often just a click away, the Stoic approach to patience is more relevant than ever. Whether it's waiting for a goal to come to fruition, enduring a period of hardship, or dealing with a slow process, Stoicism teaches us to develop the mental fortitude to stay calm and focused during these periods. The Stoic practice of patience in everyday life. Resisting impulsive reactions. One of the first places to practice patience is in how we respond to challenges. When something goes wrong, perhaps an unexpected delay or a sudden change, we can easily become irritated or upset. A Stoic would pause and reflect. Is this setback within my control? How can I respond to this situation with reason and virtue? The key is to delay an impulsive reaction and to practice emotional regulation. The long-term vision. The Stoics constantly remind us that life is a long journey. Patience is essential for cultivating the virtue of perseverance. Whether you're striving for personal or professional goals, the Stoic teaches us to remain focused on the long-term vision instead of becoming discouraged by temporary setbacks. As Seneca wisely put it, no man is more miserable than he who longs for what he has not and is grateful for what he has. By remembering that all things require time, we build the patience necessary to stay grounded. Embracing delayed gratification. In the context of modern life, we are often conditioned to seek immediate rewards. Whether it's checking our phones, eating comfort food, or indulging in distractions, these desires can interfere with our long-term growth and emotional well-being. The Stoic practice of delayed gratification encourages us to make choices based on long-term goals rather than immediate desires. When you face a choice between temporary satisfaction and long-term fulfillment, the Stoic pause gives you the clarity to choose patience over impulsivity. Enduring pain or discomfort. Patience also comes into play when we experience discomfort, whether physical or emotional. Rather than resisting pain or seeking quick fixes, the Stoic encourages us to embrace discomfort as a chance to grow. The practice of voluntary discomfort, intentionally putting yourself in the situations that stretch your endurance, like fasting, cold exposure, or physical challenges, helps you develop patience and resilience. These practices remind us that hardship does not define us. Our responses do. Stoicism and the importance of emotional detachment. In today's world, we are constantly bombarded with emotions, whether they come from personal experiences, the media, or interactions with others. The Stoic response to these emotions is detachment, not in the sense of being indifferent or aloof, but in the sense of not allowing emotions to control us. Emotions, in Stoic thought, are a result of our judgments and beliefs, and we have the power to change those beliefs. Epictetus famously said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." This reinforces the Stoic idea that emotions are not automatic reactions to external events, but rather responses based on our interpretations. The Stoics do not seek to eliminate emotions entirely, but to detach from reactive emotional responses and instead focus on reasoned responses. The practice of emotional detachment. Questioning our emotional responses. The first step in emotional detachment is to become aware of how we react emotionally to situations. When something happens that triggers an emotional response, such as anger, frustration, or sadness, a Stoic would ask, "Why am I feeling this way? What is the belief or judgment behind this emotion?" For example, if you get angry during a traffic jam, the Stoic would pause to question the belief behind the anger. What am I truly angry about? Is this situation in my control? Is it worth becoming upset over? This process helps you detach from the immediate emotion and respond with clarity and reason. Reframing emotions. Once we've identified the belief or judgment behind an emotion, the Stoic practice is to reframe it. Instead of reacting to a difficult situation with anger, we reframe it as an opportunity to practice patience or wisdom. For instance, if we experience frustration at work, we can choose to see it not as a failure or injustice, but as an opportunity to practice equanimity or self-discipline. Not letting others control our emotions. Another powerful Stoic practice is detaching emotionally from the behavior of others. We cannot control what others say or do, but we can control how we respond. The Stoic mindset encourages us to relinquish the need for others' approval and not let their actions dictate our emotional state. Instead, we act in accordance with our own values, responding with wisdom and integrity, regardless of external influences. The power of dispassion in Stoic philosophy. The concept of dispassion does not imply a lack of feeling, but refers to the ability to remain calm and unaffected by external emotions. In times of crisis, stress, or conflict, the Stoic remains grounded in their sense of reason. They do not get swept away by fear, anger, or sadness. Instead, they face challenges with emotional clarity. This practice of dispassion allows for rational decision-making and enhances our ability to face difficult situations without being overwhelmed by them. Stoicism and long-term personal growth. One of the most empowering aspects of Stoic philosophy is its focus on long-term personal development. While many people may focus on achieving short-term pleasures or external success, the Stoics emphasize the importance of aligning our daily actions with our long-term values. This involves a commitment to continual self-improvement, regardless of external circumstances. The Stoic approach to growth is not about achieving perfection. Rather, it's about making continual progress toward living in accordance with virtue and reason. Seneca explains this beautifully in his writing. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. This statement reflects the Stoic idea that personal growth is not a sprint, but a lifelong journey. Each moment of reflection, each obstacle we face, and each act of virtue helps us move closer to becoming the best version of ourselves. Key practices for long-term personal growth. Daily reflection and self-examination. The Stoics practice self-examination as a means of assessing their personal growth and identifying areas for improvement. By reflecting daily on our actions, thoughts, and emotions, we become more aware of our behaviors and can align them with our long-term goals. Regular journaling can be a powerful tool for this type of self-reflection. Pursuit of virtue. Stoicism teaches that virtue is the ultimate measure of a person's worth. Unlike modern philosophies that often tie happiness to external accomplishments, the Stoics believe that true fulfillment comes from acting in accordance with wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. The pursuit of these virtues should be the focal point of our lives. Each day we can ask ourselves, how can I embody wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation in my actions today? Resilience in the face of adversity. Every setback or hardship is an opportunity for growth. The Stoics teach us that it is through adversity that we develop resilience. Rather than seeing challenges as obstacles, the Stoic embraces them as opportunities to practice virtue. Whether we face physical pain, emotional difficulty, or a professional setback, the Stoic mindset encourages us to use these challenges to build emotional strength and wisdom. Continuous learning. The Stoic path involves a commitment to learning and improvement. By cultivating a growth mindset, we continue to learn from our experiences, reflect on our actions, and strive to become better. The Stoics were lifelong learners, constantly seeking to align their actions with virtue and wisdom. Whether through reading philosophical texts, seeking mentorship, or reflecting on our own experiences, we embrace learning as a key aspect of our personal development. Living the Stoic life. Living a Stoic life is a continual process of self-reflection, personal growth, and virtuous action. The path is not easy, and it is not about achieving perfection, but rather about striving each day to act with wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. By cultivating emotional intelligence, practicing emotional detachment, and focusing on long-term growth, we can navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience. The Stoic journey is one of inner peace, where we are no longer slaves to external circumstances or impulsive reactions. Instead, we are masters of our own emotions and creators of our own happiness. Through the daily practice of Stoicism, through reflection, self-discipline, and virtuous action, we move closer to becoming the best versions of ourselves, living lives that are fulfilling, resilient, and aligned with our highest values. Stoicism and the pursuit of inner peace. One of the most profound gifts of Stoicism is the ability to cultivate inner peace, a state of tranquility and emotional equilibrium, regardless of external circumstances. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, constantly reflected on the need to protect the mind from being disturbed by the noise and chaos of the world around him. He wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This fundamental principle of Stoicism lies in the understanding that while we cannot control external events or the actions of others, we have complete control over how we respond to these circumstances. Stoicism teaches that our mental peace and emotional stability are not dependent on the world around us, but on our ability to govern our thoughts and reactions. The practice of inner peace. Through detachment. Emotional detachment is the cornerstone of achieving inner peace. When we develop detachment, we no longer let external events dictate our emotional state. Seneca taught that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Our emotional responses to external events often arise from the meanings we attach to those events, and not necessarily from the events themselves. When we train ourselves to detach from unnecessary judgments and to view events through a rational lens, we free ourselves from the turmoil that these emotions might otherwise cause. To practice detachment and cultivate inner peace, consider the following steps. Disengage from external validation. We often look to others for validation, whether it's in the form of praise, approval, or attention. This external validation can create emotional turmoil when it is not forthcoming. Stoicism teaches us to detach from the need for external approval, understanding that our worth is intrinsic and not tied to the opinions of others. Instead, we focus on living according to virtue and reason, not based on what others think or say. Accept the impermanence of life. In Stoic thought, everything is temporary. Our joys, sorrows, successes, and failures. The more we internalize this, the more we can accept the natural ebb and flow of life without becoming emotionally invested in its fleeting moments. Whether we experience triumph or loss, We accept it as part of life's process and maintain our peace, knowing that nothing in life is permanent. Control the narrative. The Stoic approach to emotions is to challenge the automatic narratives we create in response to events. For example, if we face a setback at work, rather than interpreting it as a failure or injustice, we ask, what is the most rational response to this situation? How can I use this as an opportunity to practice patience, humility, or wisdom? By controlling the narrative in our minds, we shape our emotional responses to remain calm and composed. Mindfulness in the present moment. Practicing mindfulness through daily reflection helps maintain a sense of inner peace. In each moment, we acknowledge what is happening without judgment or emotional attachment. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to focus on the present, writing, "The present moment is all we have. Let it be enough." Focusing on the present moment reduces anxiety over the future and regret over the past, which can otherwise disturb our mental peace. Stoicism and the cultivation of healthy relationships. While Stoicism is often seen as a solitary pursuit, it also emphasizes the importance of healthy relationships. The Stoics taught that we are inherently social creatures and that our relationships can be a source of strength and growth. Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius both emphasize the importance of treating others with fairness, respect, and understanding as part of a greater ethical framework. The Stoic approach to relationships is rooted in justice, empathy, and mutual respect. Seneca stated, "We are not born for ourselves alone. We are born for the sake of the whole world." Our role in society and the way we interact with others shapes our emotional well-being and contributes to the greater good. Stoicism encourages us to navigate relationships not from a place of emotional attachment or dependence, but through virtuous action that aligns with our moral values. Applying Stoic principles to relationships. Responding to conflict with wisdom. In any relationship, conflict is inevitable. However, Stoicism teaches that our emotional response to conflict is what defines us. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, a Stoic remains calm and rational, seeking to understand the other person's perspective. Epictetus advised that when someone wrongs us, we should ask ourselves, what is the nature of this offense? Is it something I can control? What is the virtuous response? By practicing wisdom in conflict, we create opportunities for growth and understanding, rather than perpetuating emotional turmoil. Embracing empathy and justice. The Stoics valued empathy and justice in their relationships with others. While we may not agree with everyone, we should always strive to respond with fairness, understanding, and compassion. In this way, we build relationships that are grounded in mutual respect and the pursuit of virtue. Stoicism teaches us to view others through the lens of shared humanity rather than personal desires or judgments. Accepting what we cannot control. Often we become emotionally distressed when others do not behave as we expect or desire. However, Stoicism teaches us that we cannot control the actions or emotions of others, only our own. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is not to become like the one who wronged you." This perspective enables us to let go of resentment and focus on responding to others with dignity and fairness. Nurturing relationships with virtue. Stoic relationships are founded on mutual virtues such as honesty, kindness, and trust. Rather than focusing on emotional attachment or external expectations, Stoicism encourages us to act virtuously within our relationships. By focusing on giving rather than expecting to receive, we build relationships that are fulfilling and free from emotional turmoil. Stoicism and living with purpose. At its core, Stoicism is a philosophy of purpose, the belief that the ultimate goal of life is to live virtuously and in accordance with reason. Seneca writes, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." For the Stoic, purpose is not about chasing fame or material wealth, but about living a life that is aligned with virtue, wisdom, and reason. Pursuing a life of virtue and integrity, living with purpose, according to Stoicism, means that every day is an opportunity to practice wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. Stoics do not wait for life circumstances to dictate their behavior. Instead, they cultivate a mindset and a way of being that is anchored in virtuous action. Stoicism encourages us to align our daily actions with the principles that define our highest selves. Focus on meaningful goals. The Stoic path to purpose involves setting goals that are aligned with our values rather than superficial achievements. Rather than seeking external recognition, the Stoic seeks to live in a way that is consistent with internal integrity. Whether in our professional life, personal relationships, or community involvement, the Stoic asks, how can I live today with purpose and virtue? Acting with integrity. Integrity is a key Stoic virtue. The Stoic lives in alignment with their moral compass, even when it is difficult. Integrity involves doing what is right, not because of external rewards or recognition, but because it is the right thing to do. This focus on internal principles over external validation leads to a life of purposeful action and personal fulfillment. Pursuing inner fulfillment. In line with living with purpose, Stoicism teaches that fulfillment comes from within. By focusing on what we can control, we stop placing our happiness in the hands of external events or other people's actions. Contentment is cultivated not through the pursuit of material goods or status, but through aligning our actions with reason, virtue, and meaningful goals. Living in harmony with nature. The Stoic concept of living in harmony with nature means living in alignment with the natural order of things, acknowledging that everything in life, including challenges, is part of the greater whole. By accepting the impermanence of life and embracing change as a natural part of existence, we can live with purpose and peace. The path of the Stoic sage. The path of the Stoic sage is not about perfecting oneself in a single moment, but about consistently striving toward wisdom, virtue, and emotional mastery. Through the application of Stoic principles like patience, detachment, empathy, and purpose, we move closer to the ideal Stoic life, one that is governed by reason, virtue, and emotional resilience. While we may never achieve the perfection of the Stoic sage, the Stoic way encourages us to pursue personal growth every day, in every moment. Through deliberate practice, self-reflection, and commitment to our highest values, we can build a life of inner peace, purpose, and fulfillment. Stoicism teaches us that true freedom lies not in controlling external events or seeking external validation, but in mastering ourselves. As we continue to cultivate emotional resilience and act with integrity, we shape our inner world in a way that allows us to live with grace and align with nature's flow. Stoicism and facing fear. Embracing courage in the unknown. Fear is one of the most powerful emotions that can hold us back from pursuing our true potential. It prevents us from taking risks, stepping outside our comfort zones, and living fully. Stoicism, however, offers a robust framework for not only facing fear, but embracing it as an opportunity for growth. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This profound reflection underscores the Stoic belief that fear is often a result of our imagined worst-case scenarios, not reality itself. Fear thrives when we project our anxieties about the future onto the present moment. However, the Stoics understood that we cannot control the future, but we can control how we respond to it in the present. The Stoic approach to fear. Recognize fear as a mental construct. The Stoic approach to fear is to recognize it as a mental construct rather than an objective reality. When we fear something, whether it's a public speaking engagement, a difficult conversation, or making a major life decision, we are often projecting worst-case outcomes. A Stoic asks, what is the truth of this situation? What is within my control here? By identifying the unfounded beliefs behind our fears, we can begin to loosen their grip on us. Visualize and confront the worst-case scenario. The Stoics practice negative visualization, imagining the worst-case scenario so that when adversity strikes, they are mentally prepared for it. For instance, if you are afraid of losing your job, imagine the worst possible outcome: losing income, struggling to find work, and facing financial strain. Then ask, what would I do in this situation? How would I cope? What can I control? By mentally confronting the fear, we diffuse its power and become more prepared to handle whatever comes. Accepting fear as part of life. Fear is a natural part of the human experience. It is a protective mechanism that helps us avoid danger. However, the Stoics teach us not to be ruled by fear. Instead of avoiding fearful situations, we are encouraged to approach them with courage. Courage in Stoic terms is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in alignment with reason and virtue despite our fear. Epictetus famously said, "Freedom is the only true power." And freedom, in Stoic terms, comes when we stop allowing fear to dictate our actions. Courage is the freedom to act according to our highest values, regardless of the fear we may feel. Practical ways to cultivate courage. Start small. Cultivating courage doesn't mean we have to face our biggest fears immediately. Instead, start by tackling smaller fears or uncertainties in your daily life. Whether it's speaking up in a meeting, confronting a minor personal issue, or making a difficult decision, taking small steps of courage gradually builds emotional strength and desensitizes us to the fear of taking action. Embrace discomfort. Voluntary discomfort, another Stoic practice, helps us confront fear in controlled ways. It could be something as simple as taking a cold shower or fasting for a day. The practice of voluntarily choosing discomfort helps us train our minds to endure hardship without being consumed by it. Over time, we build the mental muscle to confront larger challenges with a sense of calm and courage. Align with virtue. In every fearful situation, remind yourself of your core values, whether they be wisdom, integrity, justice, or compassion. Ask, what is the most virtuous action I can take here? When we act in accordance with our values, fear becomes secondary. Courage is not just about physical bravery, but about choosing to do what is right, regardless of our emotional discomfort. Stoicism and managing stress. Finding peace amidst chaos. In our fast-paced, high-pressure world, stress is often an inevitable part of daily life. Whether it's due to work demands, personal responsibilities, or external expectations, we can easily become overwhelmed by the constant pressure. Stoicism, however, offers a powerful framework for managing stress by shifting our focus to what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. The Stoic approach to stress focuses on what you can control. The first step in managing stress is identifying what is within our control. In any stressful situation, a Stoic will reflect on the circumstances and ask, what part of this situation can I control? What can I let go of? By detaching from the things beyond our control, we reduce the emotional burden and focus on taking deliberate, effective actions where we can make a difference. For example, if we are stressed about a deadline at work, instead of worrying about everything that could go wrong, a Stoic focuses on the actions they can take now to prepare for the deadline. Whether it's organizing their time, breaking down tasks into manageable chunks, or asking for support when needed. Reframe stressful situations. Stoics often use the technique of cognitive reframing to change their perception of stressful situations. Stress usually arises when we perceive something as an obstacle. The Stoic asks, how can I reframe this challenge into an opportunity for growth? For example, if you're feeling stressed about a difficult conversation, a Stoic might see it as an opportunity to practice communication skills, courage, and empathy, rather than viewing it as a source of dread. Embrace simplicity and moderation. Often, stress arises from overcomplicating life, juggling too many responsibilities, overcommitting to others, or constantly striving for external validation. The Stoic advises embracing simplicity and moderation. Seneca warned against the desire for excess. No man is free who is not master of himself. By simplifying our commitments, prioritizing what is truly important, and letting go of unnecessary attachments, we can reduce the sources of stress in our lives. Practice mindful breathing. Stoicism encourages practicing mindfulness and self-awareness. When stress arises, a Stoic may practice mindful breathing to regain focus and composure. Taking slow, deep breaths and becoming aware of one's thoughts and feelings helps calm the nervous system and bring clarity to stressful situations. Gratitude and perspective. One powerful Stoic technique for managing stress is practicing gratitude. In times of stress, the Stoic shifts focus from the problems at hand to the aspects of life that they are grateful for. By taking a moment to reflect on the positive things in life, we reframe stress as a natural part of existence that does not define us. Gratitude also helps maintain perspective, reminding us that many stressors are temporary and that we can always find peace by focusing on what truly matters. Stoicism and the freedom from emotional turmoil. One of the most liberating aspects of Stoicism is the freedom it offers from emotional turmoil. Rather than being slaves to our passions, desires, and impulses, Stoicism teaches us to take control of our emotional lives. By recognizing that our emotional responses are rooted in our judgments and perceptions, we can reshape our mental landscape to cultivate lasting peace and resilience. How to achieve emotional freedom with Stoicism. Recognizing the source of emotional reactions. Stoics believe that emotions arise from our judgments, the way we interpret events and situations. By understanding this, we can work to challenge the beliefs that give rise to negative emotions. For instance, if we feel resentment toward a colleague, the Stoic practice would be to question the judgment behind the emotion. Do we believe that their behavior was unfair, or do we feel that it somehow threatens our self-worth? By examining these thoughts, we begin to disentangle ourselves from the emotional reaction. Living with virtue. Stoicism teaches that true emotional freedom comes from living a life of virtue. When we act in alignment with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation, we create a strong moral foundation that neutralizes negative emotions. For example, if we face criticism, instead of reacting with anger, we practice wisdom and consider the validity of the feedback. By acting with integrity, we become less affected by the opinions of others. Acceptance of fate. Fate, or the idea that certain aspects of life are beyond our control, is a core element of Stoicism. By accepting what is beyond our control and focusing on what we can influence, we free ourselves from emotional turmoil. The Stoic does not waste energy on complaining about things that cannot be changed. Instead, they focus on their response to those situations, which is the only thing within their power. The practice of detachment from outcome. Stoicism teaches us to detach ourselves from the outcomes of our actions. While we may strive for success and fulfillment, we understand that we cannot always control the result. Epictetus wrote, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about things." By focusing on the process and living virtuously, we can detach from the need for external validation or results, finding peace in the act itself. The Stoic path to freedom and emotional mastery. Stoicism is not just a philosophy, but a way of life that leads to freedom from emotional turmoil, resilience in the face of adversity, and inner peace. By applying Stoic principles, we develop the tools to confront fear, manage stress, and find purpose, all while maintaining emotional clarity and wisdom. Through detachment, courage, and acceptance, we build the mental strength to navigate life's challenges without being overwhelmed by them. By living in alignment with virtue and focusing on what we can control, we achieve the true freedom that Stoicism promises, a freedom not from external hardship, but from the emotional disturbances that arise from our judgments about them. The Stoic path to emotional mastery is a continual practice, one that helps us rise above the chaos of life and find stability in the midst of uncertainty. Through daily reflection, cognitive reframing, and the cultivation of virtue, we can cultivate lasting peace and resilience in every aspect of life. Stoicism and endurance. Building strength through adversity. One of the most compelling aspects of Stoic philosophy is its focus on endurance in the face of hardship. Stoics do not seek to escape difficulty or avoid discomfort. Instead, they view adversity as an opportunity for growth. In fact, Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." This concept of Stoic endurance emphasizes the idea that the true test of our character comes in how we handle adversity. It's not in avoiding challenges, but in how we respond to them. The Stoics teach us that while we cannot control the hardships life throws our way, we have the power to control our responses to them. By embracing adversity with grace, we develop the strength and wisdom to face life's challenges with resilience. Stoic endurance in action. Enduring discomfort with purpose. The Stoics practice voluntary discomfort as a way of building endurance. This means intentionally putting ourselves in situations where we experience discomfort, whether that's through fasting, physical exercise, or refraining from indulgence in comforts. By embracing discomfort, we train our minds and bodies to be more resilient when faced with inevitable struggles. This practice helps us develop mental toughness and emotional fortitude, preparing us for the difficulties we will inevitably encounter in life. Viewing challenges as opportunities. For the Stoic, every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This powerful idea reflects the Stoic belief that obstacles are not things to be feared or avoided, but things to be used as opportunities to strengthen our character and practice virtue. When we face challenges rather than feeling defeated, we can ask, how can this situation help me become a stronger, wiser person? By seeing challenges as opportunities, we change our perception and turn adversity into a tool for personal development. Emotional resilience. Stoic endurance also involves emotional resilience. When we encounter setbacks, it's natural to feel sadness, anger, or frustration. However, the Stoic teaches us that while we cannot prevent emotions from arising, we can choose how we respond to them. Instead of being consumed by these emotions, we can practice emotional self-regulation, pausing to reflect before reacting. This allows us to endure hardship without being overwhelmed by emotional turmoil. By maintaining emotional composure in the face of adversity, we not only endure, but grow stronger. Developing patience. Stoic endurance requires patience, particularly when things are not progressing as quickly as we would like. Whether in our personal or professional lives, the Stoic practice is to remain patient, knowing that progress takes time. Seneca teaches us that time is the most valuable thing we have, but it is also the thing most often wasted. By making the most of our time and focusing on consistent progress, we build the endurance needed to achieve our long-term goals. Stoicism and aligning actions with values. Living a life of integrity. The Stoic philosophy calls us to live in accordance with virtue, acting in alignment with reason, wisdom, justice, and moderation. For the Stoic, the ultimate goal of life is not wealth, fame, or external validation, but to cultivate a life that is congruent with internal principles. When we align our actions with our values, we find greater purpose and fulfillment, regardless of external circumstances. This is the Stoic path to true success. It is not success defined by the world's standards, but success based on living virtuously and being at peace with our choices. Living in alignment with virtue, acting with wisdom. Wisdom, the ability to discern what is true and right, is one of the core Stoic virtues. To live in alignment with wisdom, we must make decisions based on reason, not emotion. This means that when we are faced with a difficult choice, we take the time to reflect on what is truly just, rational, and virtuous, rather than being swayed by external pressures or immediate gratification. By grounding our actions in wisdom, we build a life of integrity and emotional stability. Living with integrity. Integrity is the foundation of Stoic living. When we act with integrity, we remain true to our principles regardless of the circumstances. This means making decisions that reflect our values, even when it is difficult or when others may disagree. Integrity is about being consistent in thought, word, and deed, aligning our actions with our highest ideals. Seneca advises, "A good character is not made by a single action, but by a lifetime of actions." This process of continually striving for integrity, even in small things, is the key to building a life of moral character. The practice of justice. Justice in Stoicism is not just about fair dealings with others. It's about acting in a way that contributes to the well-being of the whole community. For the Stoic, justice involves ensuring that our actions promote fairness, equality, and the common good. By acting justly, we not only enhance our own emotional well-being, but contribute to the well-being of society at large. When we live with justice, we avoid the emotional turbulence that arises from guilt, shame, or resentment. Moderation and self-control. Moderation is the practice of controlling our desires and not allowing them to control us. In a world that encourages indulgence and excess, Stoicism teaches us to live with balance and restraint. Whether it's consuming food, spending money, or seeking attention, moderation ensures that our desires do not take over our lives. Instead of giving in to every impulse, we practice self-control, which leads to freedom from excessive emotions and external dependency. Living with purpose and long-term goals. The Stoics emphasize the importance of long-term goals over short-term rewards. Life's greatest fulfillment comes from living with purpose and continuously striving to live in accordance with virtue. Short-term success, pleasure, or material gains are fleeting, but a life aligned with meaningful values offers lasting fulfillment. Focus on long-term fulfillment. The Stoics teach us to think about life in terms of long-term fulfillment rather than momentary pleasures. While society often pushes us to seek short-term gains, the Stoic path is one of continuous growth and alignment with our deepest values. This focus on the long term ensures that we make decisions that are not based on fleeting desires but on principles that guide us toward lasting peace and wisdom. The goal of living well. Stoicism ultimately teaches that the goal of life is to live well, to act with wisdom, kindness, and moral integrity in every situation. This doesn't mean avoiding difficulties or pursuing comfort. It means embracing life as it is and responding to it with virtue. Whether we are facing success or failure, wealth or poverty, joy or sorrow, the Stoic focuses on acting according to reason and pursuing virtue, which leads to emotional freedom and fulfillment. Endurance in the face of long-term goals. Achieving long-term goals requires persistence and patience, the ability to stay committed to a purpose even when progress is slow. The Stoic teaches us that success in any pursuit comes through consistent effort over time, not through shortcuts or quick fixes. By staying aligned with our core values and virtue, we can endure the challenges that arise along the way and continue making progress toward meaningful goals. The Stoic journey toward emotional mastery and fulfillment. Stoicism provides a robust framework for living with purpose, resilience, and emotional clarity. By embracing Stoic practices such as endurance, emotional regulation, and living in alignment with our values, we can face life's inevitable challenges with grace and composure. The Stoic path is not one of avoiding difficulties, but of meeting life with virtue and reason, even when confronted with hardship. Whether it's facing fear, overcoming stress, or building lasting fulfillment, Stoicism teaches us to cultivate inner strength and wisdom that allows us to remain steadfast no matter what life brings. At the heart of Stoicism is the belief that we can control our reactions to external events. That true freedom comes not from controlling the world around us, but from mastering our own minds. By living in accordance with virtue, focusing on long-term fulfillment, and practicing emotional resilience, we move closer to the Stoic ideal, a life of true freedom, inner peace, and lasting fulfillment. Stoicism in the modern world. Overcoming distractions and finding clarity. In today's fast-paced, digitally driven world, we face constant distractions. From the notifications on our phones to the overwhelming demands of work, social life, and media, our attention is perpetually fragmented. The modern world often promotes short-term pleasure and instant gratification, making it difficult to focus on long-term goals and deeper fulfillment. Stoicism, however, provides us with the tools to master our attention and avoid distractions, helping us live with greater clarity, focus, and purpose. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This simple yet profound insight encourages us to align our actions with our deepest values and aspirations, rather than being swept along by external forces. By applying Stoic principles, we can rise above the noise of modern life and focus on what truly matters. The Stoic practice of focused attention. Mindful awareness of our thoughts. One of the core Stoic practices is the development of mindful awareness. This involves observing our thoughts and actions without judgment and understanding the underlying motivations behind them. When we engage in a Stoic practice, we are reminded to focus not just on what we are doing, but on how we are doing it, whether we are acting in alignment with our principles and goals. Through mindful awareness, we recognize when we are being pulled off course by distractions, external pressures, or impulses. The dichotomy of control. A fundamental Stoic practice is the dichotomy of control, which teaches us to focus only on the things we can control and to let go of what is beyond our influence. In modern life, we often feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of things demanding our attention. The Stoic reminds us to filter out the unnecessary and focus on what is truly within our control. For example, we can control how we respond to others, how we manage our time, and the attitudes we cultivate, but we cannot control the actions of others or external events. By focusing only on what we can control, we free ourselves from the emotional burden of trying to manage things beyond our reach. Deliberate practice of simplicity. The Stoic ideal of simplicity encourages us to remove distractions and focus on what is essential. Whether it's simplifying our workspace, limiting our social media use, or prioritizing the most important tasks, the Stoic teaches us to clear the clutter from our lives. This doesn't mean avoiding fun or enjoyment, but it means choosing wisely where we invest our time and energy. When we embrace simplicity, we make room for deep work, personal growth, and emotional well-being. Setting clear intentions. Each day, a Stoic would reflect on their intentions and decide how they will act. In modern terms, this could be seen as setting clear intentions for how we will spend our day. The Stoic practice of reflecting in the morning allows us to align our actions with our highest values. We remind ourselves of what we want to achieve, not just in terms of external success, but in terms of how we want to engage with the world. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." By setting clear intentions, we ensure that our actions align with our values, helping us stay focused throughout the day. Stoicism and mindfulness. Being present in every moment. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the current moment, without judgment or distraction. While mindfulness is often associated with Eastern traditions, Stoicism contains many principles that encourage a similar approach to mental clarity and presence. The Stoic philosophers recognize that the past is beyond our control and that the future is uncertain. The only time we truly have is the present, and the Stoic ideal is to be fully engaged in the present moment, regardless of the challenges we face. The Stoic practice of being present. Living in accordance with nature. The Stoics taught that we should live in accordance with nature, which includes living in alignment with the present moment. To do so, we must recognize that everything is temporary, both good and bad, and that life is always unfolding in real time. When we accept that life is a series of fleeting moments, we are able to embrace the present more fully. We stop clinging to the past or worrying about the future, and we live with greater awareness and focus on what is happening now. Daily reflection on our actions. Mindful reflection is a key Stoic practice. At the end of each day, the Stoic would reflect on their actions and examine their thoughts. Were they acting according to their highest values? Did they maintain emotional composure? Did they respond to challenges with wisdom and virtue? This daily self-reflection helps us stay present with our thoughts and actions, ensuring that we are constantly improving and aligning with our values. Focusing on one task at a time. Multitasking often leads to distraction and reduced focus. Stoicism teaches us to focus on one task at a time, giving it our full attention. This practice is not just about completing tasks, but about fully engaging with the task at hand, no matter how small. When we give each moment our full attention, we bring clarity to our actions, whether we are working, interacting with others, or taking care of ourselves. Responding to events with equanimity. Another aspect of mindfulness in Stoicism is equanimity, maintaining calmness and clarity in the face of external events. The Stoic does not react impulsively to life's ups and downs, but responds thoughtfully and with reason. This means that when stress or frustration arises, the Stoic remains aware of the present moment, pausing before reacting, and chooses a response based on wisdom rather than emotional reactivity. By cultivating this mindfulness, we can face challenges with inner peace and emotional resilience. Stoicism and the importance of consistency, the key to long-term success. One of the most significant contributions Stoicism offers in the pursuit of personal development is its emphasis on consistency. The Stoics believe that long-term success comes not from sporadic bursts of effort, but from steady, consistent action aligned with virtuous living. The Stoic practice of consistency. Small, consistent actions. Stoicism teaches us that progress is made in small, consistent actions, rather than through sudden leaps. This principle encourages us to show up every day with dedication and focus, regardless of how we feel in the moment. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." By making a habit of small, virtuous actions each day, we build the momentum that leads to long-term growth and success. Commitment to personal development. Consistency also means committing to constant personal growth. The Stoic is never fully satisfied with their current state, but always seeks to improve. This might involve practicing emotional regulation, deepening our understanding of Stoic principles, or developing new virtues. The Stoic path is a lifelong pursuit, a commitment to continuous learning and self-improvement, no matter where we are in life. Embracing the process. Stoics teach us that success is not found in the end result, but in the process itself. Whether we are achieving a personal goal or facing a difficult situation, the Stoic embraces each step of the process, knowing that it is an opportunity to practice virtue and grow stronger. Instead of focusing solely on the destination, we embrace the journey with patience and resilience, understanding that each day is a chance to improve and align with our values. Daily habits of virtue. Stoicism teaches us to make daily decisions that align with our core values. Consistency in our actions, choosing wisdom over ignorance, courage over fear, and justice over indifference, is the foundation of Stoic living. The more consistently we practice these virtues, the more they become ingrained in our character, and the easier it becomes to live with integrity and purpose. Living a Stoic life in the modern age Stoicism offers timeless tools for living a purposeful and fulfilling life, even in the midst of modern distractions, challenges, and pressures. By applying Stoic principles, we can cultivate mental clarity, emotional resilience, and purpose, all while maintaining inner peace and staying aligned with our highest values. Through the practice of mindfulness, endurance, and consistency, we can develop the strength to face life's inevitable obstacles with grace and fortitude. Stoicism teaches us to embrace life's challenges as opportunities for growth and to focus on what is within our control, our thoughts, actions, and responses. By living with intention and integrity, we navigate life's complexities without being overwhelmed by them. Stoicism shows us that true freedom lies not in controlling external events, but in mastering ourselves, allowing us to live a life of purpose, meaning, and lasting fulfillment. Embracing Stoicism for a life of purpose and resilience. Stoicism is not just a philosophy, it is a way of life, a practical guide to living with purpose, resilience, and emotional mastery. In a world that often feels chaotic and unpredictable, Stoicism provides us with the tools to remain grounded and navigate life's challenges with grace and composure. The core message of Stoicism is simple yet profound. We cannot control the external events that happen to us, but we have full control over how we respond to them. This fundamental truth frees us from the emotional turmoil that often comes with reacting impulsively to life's ups and downs. By focusing on what we can control, our thoughts, actions, and responses, we gain the power to live in alignment with our highest values, regardless of external circumstances. From emotional resilience to mental clarity, Stoicism teaches us that the path to true freedom lies in mastering ourselves. Rather than seeking happiness through fleeting pleasures or external validation, The Stoic embraces the journey of self-improvement, cultivating virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation along the way. Through the practice of daily reflection, mindfulness, and purposeful action, we build a life that is not driven by the pursuit of success or material gain, but by a deep commitment to living virtuously. Endurance, emotional detachment, and consistent growth are the cornerstones of Stoic practice. By facing each challenge with wisdom and patience, we learn to turn adversity into an opportunity for growth. By embracing discomfort and living with simplicity, we free ourselves from the distractions and excesses that often cloud our minds. And by staying committed to our values, we align our actions with our deeper purpose, finding fulfillment not in what we have, but in who we are becoming. Ultimately, the Stoic path is one of continuous self-reflection and growth. It's a lifelong journey, one where we strive not for perfection, but for progress. With Stoic principles, we develop the inner strength to face any storm, the mental clarity to make wise decisions, and the emotional resilience to thrive in even the most uncertain of times. By living according to nature, focusing on the present moment, and acting with integrity, we can create a life of lasting peace, fulfillment, and freedom. Stoicism teaches us that while we may not be able to control the world around us, we can always choose how we engage with it, transforming every moment into an opportunity to live better, wiser, and stronger. If you found this journey through Stoic philosophy insightful and empowering, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on more content that helps you cultivate inner strength, emotional resilience, and live a life of purpose. Your support means a lot, and together we can continue to explore timeless wisdom for modern life. Thank you for being part of this journey. Here's to living with Stoic clarity and purpose.